Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake. And what a good day in America. It really is. If you're joining us from around the world, you may not have heard of some of the developments that have just happened. But it bodes well for all of us, inside and outside the borders of the United States. Because, like it or not, America is sort of the gorilla in the room. And you really, really gotta hope it's a nice gorilla. This gorilla just got a little nicer. In Wisconsin, first and foremost, yes, even above Donald Trump, in Wisconsin, Janet Protasiewicz, Judge Janet, has won the seat for the Supreme Court there. That's huge. It's huge for two reasons. Number one pertains to the health of the country overall. If we were going to have another organized rebellion in the U.S., Wisconsin would have been part of it. It was just on track for that. The candidate who lost was an insurrectionist. And I mean, I cannot tell you what a dodged bullet that is. There's also the somewhat less direct. There we are. There's the somewhat less direct problem that we've had in Wisconsin, with it being like the dark opposite of Michigan. I guess that's more Florida these days. But it was a petri dish wherein an experiment was being conducted for how to make states less democratic. And I'm glad that the results of that particular experiment are going to tell others who would destroy democracy that if you push it too far, you lose. Good. But we have other great news as well. 45's first 34 charges are now available to the public to see. We're going to look them over together, have a fun time with that. I will tell you what I think about them. I'll tell you what I've heard other talking heads think about them. And most importantly, I'll tell you why I don't really care about the specifics, because the point of this, and I'll clue you into where we're going with this, the point was for a prosecutor to treat Trump like they would anybody else, to prove that this is what we do in this country. It is not a taboo that must be feared. Mission accomplished. Now, based on what I saw, I strongly suspect we are going to get a guilty verdict in that. But that's purely, sideline speculation. We aren't really going to know until December, unless the whole thing somehow gets thrown out before then. But again, I stress, what was the important thing in that particular case? Really, for any of these cases, it was to prove that Donald Trump will be held accountable for his actions just like anybody else. And by the way, if anybody else behaved publicly the way Donald Trump did, they would also, or rather they should also, expect to see themselves in a court of law. Even if it turns out he's not guilty, which, folks, it's possible. I don't think so, but I have to acknowledge it's possible. Even if he turns out to be not guilty on a technicality, you still cannot conduct yourself in such a publicly shady manner and not expect intervention from law enforcement. To give you a more simplified version of this, if you left your house drenched in a red substance, carrying a carpet very much in the shape of a human body, you would be expected, or at least I would hope your neighbors would expect the police to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? What is this? If you come sprinting out of a bank, holding a bag with a dollar bill on the side and wearing a ski mask, you would expect law enforcement to intervene and at least ask some questions. And until now, no matter how blatant a U.S. president or former U.S. president has publicly been with their violations of the law, we have never had law enforcement truly intervene. And now that's changed. It's a great day. Also, just saw some breaking news. According to the Midas Touch, we'll have a look at that. Let's say if we can get to 15 likes in this stream, we'll look at the breaking news from Midas Touch. What else do we have? Oh, yes, our first story of the evening. A North Carolina lawmaker has made the dumbest political bet fathomable. I just can't imagine what she was thinking. We're gonna break into that. Let's have a look at who's joining us for the beginning of this stream. Well, first of all, we got 4 concurrent viewers to start us off and 4 likes. Folks, thank you. Ooh, thank you. That is highly appreciated. Wireless Mike says, ha, I'm early for a change. What's up, Jake? Hello, Wicked Peeps. What's up, Wireless Mike? Good to see you, man. Will 2024 says, good evening. Hello to all. And Franny P, hello as well. All right. What do you say we jump into this thing? I'm ready. Leading it off with what has to be just about the dumbest thing I have ever seen a lawmaker do. And it happens to be this right, chow. A North Carolina lawmaker, this is according to NPR, a North Carolina lawmaker has switched parties, creating a path to stricter abortion laws. And as bad as that sounds, the reality for people living in North Carolina is worse. Go to that dual screen. Not that one. I have to tell you, folks, I really enjoy doing the live stream. There are times when I will pre-record a segment because it involves doing technical stuff live, which, as I think by now I have firmly demonstrated, I am hot garbage at. We need a Matt or Brendan. Okay. Let's look at that NPR article. A North Carolina lawmaker has switched parties, creating a path to stricter abortion laws. A Democratic North Carolina lawmaker announced on Wednesday that she was switching to the GOP, giving Republicans a veto-proof majority in the state and paving a way for major legislative changes. Who is she? North Carolina State House member Tricia Cotham. Cotham's political career is preceded by a legacy of Democrats. Oh, good. Somebody whose family has been in politics for a long time. That never goes badly. Her mother, Pat Cotham, is a longtime Democratic member of the Mecklenburg Commission and a Democratic National Committee member, of course. Just as a side note, I am massively not a fan of the DNC. And her father, John, was a chair of the county's Democratic Party. She is a former public school assistant principal. Cotham had previously served in the North Carolina House of Representatives from 2007 to 2016 when she was booted out before returning in January. So bear in mind, she is recently reelected, and she ran as a Democrat. Her stance on several issues has been consistent with the Democratic Party. She's previously opposed new abortion restrictions, been supportive of LGBTQ rights, and supported public education in the state. But she has also voted with the GOP recently, including a bill requiring sheriffs to cooperate with ICE officials. That's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they are garbage. That was created by George W. Bush, and they are essentially where we take our very most racist cops and tell them to go hog wild, according to reporting from member station WFAE. All right, let's jump to the what's the big deal. We're not going to go through this whole article because we have clips. Early on Wednesday, Cotham announced the switch comes at a tipping point for North Carolina's legislature and would give the GOP 72 seats in the House, the precise number needed for a veto-proof majority. In other words, the state's Democratic governor will not be able to veto votes that pass or bills that pass with that many votes. It already has the numbers in the Senate, meaning Republicans can enact policy over the opposition of Democratic Governor Roy Cooper. Okay, you're going to see a theme here. You've got a state with wishy-washy Democrats, with Democratic leadership in the top seat, and a ton of Republicans operating in the state's House and Senate. So what does that tell you? Let's do a quiz for the audience real quick. What does that tell you? You have Democratic leadership in the highest seat that everybody voted for. But when you come down to the districts, you've got suddenly a lot more conservatives. Let's see if the comments have it. What causes that is the question. The rich/powerful are rarely held accountable, so that is what makes this very important. Well, that's surely true. Wireless Mike says, who's got to this dino? What do they have on her? I just think she sees opportunity here. Gerrymandering is what I'm looking for. Gerrymandering causes this. North Carolina is gerrymandered. Utah, believe it or not, gerrymandered. Wisconsin, highly gerrymandered. Oh, baby, we're returning to that. But yes, North Carolina is a very gerrymandered state. And to your question, Wireless Mike, what is she getting out of it? Well, she's in a very blue district now. With gerrymandering, and with Republicans being the ones who tend to control how gerrymandering goes, because Democrats don't need to do it, so they don't need to risk the scandal. I'm not going to pretend like they're saints, but they simply don't need to engage in that kind of ugliness because they tend to get the popular vote. So she's making nice with Republicans, possibly hoping to make a big enough name for herself by being an important swing vote to make a veto-proof majority that she can go to the national stage. That is likely what she is hoping to get. Personal aggrandizement. Let's listen to her talking about the switch in her own words.
Representative Cotham taking the podium there. Right now, you're looking at House Speaker Tim Moore there addressing the crowd. So let's go ahead and listen in live.
Nah, we don't need all that. Let's jump right to when she's speaking. Good Lord. All right, here we go. I'll try not to rant and rave the entire time. Let's just rip this Band-Aid off.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. I am Tricia Cotham. I am a single mom of 2 amazing sons, a teacher, a small business owner, a woman with strong faith, a national championship basketball coach, and a public servant.
And also a traitor.
Today, I add Republican to that list.
Is just observations. If you're from, she doesn't look too comfortable right now. If you're from North Carolina or you know someone from North Carolina, now would be a great time to write her and tell her that you think what she has done is despicable. Because what she has done is despicable. And letting her know that you're disgusted by her behavior will help keep her votes less radical Republican. If she knows she's being watched closely, that is going to help keep her in line. But do also understand that she is likely no longer, no matter what else, she is likely no longer looking to please her constituents because her constituents voted in a Democrat. And she's made the calculation that whatever happens next is not going to rely on those constituents. Disgraceful. Let's listen to her.
I have decided to change my party affiliation, joining the Republican Party, and have been welcomed with open arms by my colleagues. And I'm glad to call you all my colleagues. As long as I have
I almost, I want to do a Sam Cedar. Pause it. Look at who she's saying, I'm glad to call you all my colleagues to. This is modern Republican Party is trans-hating. They've always been gay-bashing. They've always been anti-minority of any sort. She has to never live this down. Never, ever, ever, ever again. If you do see her crop up in national politics, if she does manage to get, if she manages to represent the whole state in the U.S. Senate, for example, this needs to be hung around her neck constantly. Like, all right, whatever you say, I can't trust you because you're a traitor. You switched parties very shortly after you were elected. You took away the choice of the people. Good Lord. All right, for real. I'm gonna let her
been a Democrat, the Democrats have tried to be a big tent. But this now where we are, modern day Democratic Party, has become unrecognizable to me and to so many others throughout this state and this country. The party wants to villainize anyone who has free thought, free judgment, has solutions, who wants to get to work to better our state, not just sit in a meeting and have a workshop after a workshop, but really work with individuals to get things done, because that's what real public servants do. If you don't do exactly what the Democrats want you to do, they will try to bully you. They will try to cast you aside. I saw that when I first filed for office and was told, why didn't you ask for our permission? I didn't think I needed to do that as a female. And quite frankly, I was offended. But when I came back to this legislature, I knew times were different and things had changed. I also knew that I was different. I have been through a lot in life, and so I am just different too, and I'm proud of that. It became very clear to me early on in January.
All right, let me address two things here. Last point first. Credit where it's due. She is here. I don't know that I believe her at all. But if we're just going off the public statement, she is saying here, finally got around to it, I am different. I believe different things than I did, essentially. That is the only acceptable reason. Unless there were specific huge events, massive events, for an experienced politician to switch parties so close after their election. Why do I specify a serious, like not serious, an experienced politician? Because if you've never been in that state's political party before, you might show up and be like, oh, these people are not at all what they appear to be publicly. I'm getting out of here. I'm switching. I don't care about the party. All right, fine. She's been in this dance before. She knows who these people are. That excuse gone. But if she did, in her heart of hearts, over the last, year, she did really change, then that is an acceptable reason to switch parties. Just to be fair. Let's talk about why I think it is the dumbest thing you could possibly do at this particular point in history. To me, that seems like dumping all of your stock in Apple. No. Let's go even bigger. That's like dropping all of your stock in the Ford company. Right as the Model T is being rolled out. Or dropping all your stock, all right, we'll do the original, in Apple in the 90s. For a Southern Democrat to leave the Democratic Party, number one, you are not going to win over MAGA. You're not going to be able to do that. In a primary, you will get annihilated by somebody who's calling you a rhino and has actually a good case to make for it. Your voting record will be abhorrent by trying to please your current constituents, your current voters. You will do reasonable decisions, and that's, to MAGA folks, oh my God. That'll just, she will never, ever please them. But that's just the negative side of it. What is she giving up? What makes it like dropping Apple stock or stock in Ford or whatever? If you are the sort of person in a southern state who got elected as a Democrat, you're already putting all of your career into pleasing the middle. And the middle consistently, even if, unlike me, even if you don't believe that the Republicans are going away fast, and I truly believe they will be a either non-existent or an irrelevant political party in 2 years. But even if you don't believe that, the fact remains that centrists are abandoning the Republican Party like crazy. And if you're in the politics game, unless you're hoping to somehow get a job where you get appointed somewhere, and by the way, all of her friends now despise her, you might have made new friends, no idea how reliable they're going to be. If you're playing the politics game, you require votes. And everybody who was a fan of her was a centrist, or at the very least was a Democrat that bit down and endured voting for her. But now, no. Whatever she does in the remainder of her term better be influential enough that she gets the next seat, that it takes her right to another position, because that position that she's in, she's not going to get it again. She's going to, if her district does get so gerrymandered that she's in a serious Republican race, she's going to get primaried easily. Let her finish talking.
That you better vote in line with everything Governor Cooper tells you to do, from signing onto bills.
That makes me real nervous about that veto-proof majority. Uh-oh.
To he wanted to pick your seat on the House floor, to your committee requests, all of this sense of control. I will not be controlled by anyone.
Rex Trek brings up an interesting point. Rex Trek says she was paid off. I think, yeah. Let's make sure. Oh, I hope this doesn't. There we go. Let's make sure, though, that we're clear about what that could mean. One moment. So, it doesn't necessarily mean paid off with money. She could have been offered a juicy committee seat. She could have been offered X or Y or Z. There's all kinds of things that she could have been offered, and in fact, probably was offered by her new GOP buddies. And if your old pal Jake's bet is correct, that'll mean she's been offered a whole lot of things that the GOP is about to not be able to provide for her. A year's a long time in politics. But if I'm right, there's going to be a mass exodus in 2024, because we're at the point where the two factions within the Republican Party just cannot coexist anymore. For a while, their interests were aligned, but every day that goes by, their interests get farther and farther apart.
I have always been a free thinker, a woman of faith, a person of independent judgment, and of common sense. I have always tried to work across the aisle from day one, and I'm proud of that work, because that means we are working together as statesmen and stateswomen. Unfortunately, that is talk in the Democratic Party that that's a good thing, but there is little action when it comes to that. And if I do that, I was considered a traitor, I was told, a spy. Please don't come to caucus. You'll tell everything we know. That is a terrible mentality, and that's just wrong of what's happening in politics.
I am all for working together with people. Only on decent things. If a MAGA Republican wants to help us get big money out of politics, cool. Welcome aboard for that effort. But if her Democratic colleagues are going to her and calling her a traitor, clearly those are not, they're not talking about issues of mutual interest. let's let it finish up, because I'm going to give her, for the remainder of this, the relevance that I think she will have in politics after 24, which is to say very little.
I've suffered many attacks since I've been up here.
Good.
From Democrats in the party, from blasting me on Twitter, to calling me names, to going after my family, going after my children.
Did they really,
That
though?
is wrong.
I swear to you, as soon as... God. All right, I'm not even going to let her finish this thing. She doesn't really... there is a part, she says, where she... All right. We'll get to one more thing, but I'll scrub through it. I wanted to finish the point I was making earlier. That comment, she was like, where she said, I didn't think I, as a woman, would have to ask permission. That's such a Republican framing. And I realize what she probably meant is, or what she was hoping to communicate, was that she was saying, I didn't think that just because I'm a woman, I should have to ask permission. But that is clearly a misrepresentation of what the left believes, what Democrats believe. It's that gender is irrelevant, and the way she said it made it seem like, wait a minute, I'm a woman, I don't have to ask permission. I realize there's nobody that's actually making that case anywhere. But she's just fitting so well into what a Republican would want a former Democrat to look like, and it's gross. Yeah, let's scrub through to that last part. Hold up.
And women in my family who have served.
Relevant.
One at the legislature. They picked the wrong chick. They have lied on me. Women in the House caucus have said vicious and started vicious rumors, have directly sent messages to me. For him to have to witness that and see how a grown woman would act and try to even explain it was wrong.
Oh, damn it. All right. Going back. Here she is explaining why she left. We should hear it in her words. I'm not going to interrupt it once, no matter how fiery I get. Not interrupting. You won't see me again until she's done talking.
Jacket for something else. Why are we at this place in politics? That is really unacceptable and needs to change. I want to be a part of that change agent for the greater good of our state, for the greater good of all the public servants behind me and all back there. I firmly believe that it is my responsibility as a legislator to learn everything I can, to ask questions, to hear perspectives before deciding how to vote. When did Democrats become so afraid of independent thought? Because they're definitely not encouraging it at all. Perhaps they don't like what they can't control. It became very clear to me this was about control on day one at the legislature. They picked the wrong chick for that. They have pushed me out. They have made it very clear from the day I filed back in March of last year that they did not want me and tried to do everything they could to defeat me. They have lied on me. Women in the House caucus have said vicious and started vicious rumors that are very hypocritical of other stances that they make, attacking me on Twitter, in person to my face, attacking my mother, and saying something to my boys. That is wrong and hypocritical. Some have sent threatening messages to me. Interest groups and lobbying groups that are aligned with the Democrat Party have directly sent messages to my 12-year-old son. And that needs to stop. And it's not just been one time.
Just chiming in to say that if indeed that is true, and I do not inherently trust anything she says, but if it is true, she's right. It should stop. There's no reason for an adult to contact a 12-year-old over business matters. None.
One of the worst moments was when I took my little boy to Target. And, you go to Target, it inspires you. You see what you might need to buy. You never know.
What?
And so we were exploring different things, looking at RC cars and Nerf guns. And out of nowhere, a woman came, and she cussed me out, up and down, screaming at me, trying to remain composure in that moment, but most importantly, protecting my son, my baby. And for him to have to witness that and see how a grown woman would act and try to even explain it was wrong. But children teach us the best lessons, and they really help us in moments like this.
Well, that's all I'm playing from her. The other thing she said somewhere in there is that she says that her beliefs haven't changed. Somewhat contradictory to what she said earlier. She said her core beliefs are the same, meaning or hinting that she will vote the same. I don't think that's true, though. Okay, so she kept saying Democrats this, Democrats that, and then would describe what her constituents were saying to her. In other words, she was happy to hang all that around a political party's neck, but she's just describing her constituents not being satisfied with the job she did. They're not going to cease being her constituents just because she switched parties. I mean, it's not good. Obviously, it's not good. Let's switch this to the Democratic Party response. Franny P says her 12-year-old son, like MTG chasing Parkland survivors, calling them actors. Welcome to our world, chickie. Cluck, cluck. Indeed. Bird Beard, good to see you. Dean Oldfield says, has this chick never been to a DT rally? Yeah, God, she is in for a hell of an awakening when she runs into her new fans. They are monsters. Here is the Democrats' response.
A major move on Jones Street, where House member Tricia Cotham of the Charlotte area announced she is switching parties, becoming a Republican and leaving the Democrat Party.
A move which gives the party a supermajority. Our Michael Perchik is joining us outside the North Carolina Democratic Party headquarters in downtown Raleigh with the Democrats' response. Michael, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, John and Barbara. Democrats furious at the decision, saying that Cotham was deceitful when she ran for the seat just last year as a Democrat. Many calling for her resignation during a press conference that just wrapped up a few moments ago outside their headquarters. Now, Cotham represents Mecklenburg County. She won November's election by nearly 20 points. Until today, Democrats had the slimmest of margins in maintaining Governor Cooper's veto power. But this change now means Republicans have the votes in both chambers to override any veto. North Carolina Democratic Party Chair Anderson Clayton using pointed words in her remarks this afternoon.
Reproductive freedoms are on the line. Our public schools are on the line. LGBTQ rights are on the line. Yes. Voting rights are on the line. Yes. Our future as a state is on the line. Yes. And I have to say about all of this, this is about the issues. It's not about the politics of this.
Cotham's current district is considered a fairly safe Democratic seat, and while Speaker Moore did not share specifics this morning about future redistricting for that region, he did speak broadly about plans to do so in the House, Senate, and Congress. We'll have to see how that will shake out in 2024. We're going to have a full wrap-up from Republicans, Democrats, political analysis of what this move can mean throughout the afternoon, and of course online at abc11.com. I'm Michael Perchik, ABC 11.
Well done, Michael Perchik. Yeah, so she switched parties. It is devastating. Devastating for North Carolina. It gives power to an already unfairly overpowered party in that state. North Carolina looks, if you look at a district map, blood red. It shouldn't. Case in point, their governor is a Democrat. Get into what you can do in a moment. Dean Oldfield with the $5 super chat. Much appreciated. Thank you, my friend. Granny P, I remain convinced she has been paid. It's possible. There's a lot of ways to get paid, though. I'm just the reason I stress that so much is not to suggest that there's a lack of corruption, but if you're looking for literal dollars, it's going to be harder to find where the corruption is, because they know you're looking for that. It'll take the form of, if it actually is a bribe, it'll take the form of like her brother getting the contracts to pave the roads in a place, or so on and so forth. Cloaked in just that extra layer of complication, so that it's that much more boring, it's that much more difficult to explain why it is corruption, and so on and so forth. What can you do? Vote, for Christ's sake, in primaries. This is both to deal with this specific situation, but I realize also she's not a Democrat, so if you're voting in the primary and you're a Democrat, what's it going to do? It's going to give you stiff competition in the general election. If there's a lot of support behind candidate in the primaries, they carry momentum with them. That draws media attention. It's more than just how much they've energized their base who are voting in primaries. It's how much the base and the voters in general energizes their campaign. But there's more. There is a version of this person elsewhere in the country. This is really no different than Manchin or Sinema. We need to not have these kinds of people in the party. And the way to ensure that this is how we're rolling is to vote in the primaries and get someone who genuinely does believe in progressive politics. Because while you might have a Democrat who is a centrist switch parties because they can still more or less fulfill their campaign promises, or at least pretend to fulfill their campaign promises while they are wearing the other party's mantle, you're not going to have that with a progressive. Vote in primaries. That is the most important thing you can do. And it is crucially important. And now, right now, 2023, now would be the time to look around your area and inquire as to whether or not there are progressives in your neck of the woods. And if there are, support them. It's too early yet for people to be announcing, I'm running for this, I'm running for that. But they're also not all that secretive about it. So if there are rumors, chase them. And if there's somebody you believe in, help them. And if there really is no one who's going to run to be a representative of the state or in the state that is sufficiently progressive, that's your call. Pick it up. You're being called to action. Your call to run, I suppose, is what I should have said. Well, what the hell? Let's, I was going to read the Trump charges next, but I'm kind of thinking let's keep it with gerrymandering. Let's look at the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And what just happened there? Oh, baby. Janet Protasiewicz, Judge Janet, is in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Vote period, says Jim Green. It's what you can do. Ah, my man. Dean Oldfield says all politics are local. Yes. Yes, sir. Wireless Mike says, with what's going on here in Tennessee right now, I'm hoping there will be some progressives running here. Yeah, I honestly believe that people pay enough attention now. Not as much as, frankly, they should. And I don't think it's the people who are paying attention, not paying enough attention. It's not enough people paying attention. But still, there's way more than there's ever been, at least in my lifetime. People paying attention to the nuts and bolts of how things work, who made what decisions. Tennessee is one of many states that is going to be seeking real change, genuine change. Is going to be willing to make changes to how they vote, because it's hard to cling on to a silly idea about playing cops and robbers in your backyard and not wanting the government to come take your assault rifle away, when on the other hand one of your nephews was killed in a school shooting. Yeah, I hope progressives run as well. Anyway, Wisconsin. Judge Janet won, baby. It wasn't even close. It was not remotely close. I think she won by 11 points. And it was just early in the evening. It was clear. Let's have a quick look at some coverage by MSNBC regarding this.
Where for the first time in 15 years, the state's Supreme Court will have a liberal majority. NBC News can project that Milwaukee County Judge Janet Protasewicz has defeated former state Supreme Court Justice Dan Kelly. And joining us now, national political correspondent Steve Kornacki. He is over at the big board. Steve, good morning. Boy, big implications here for policy and perhaps for the future of the vote in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, a lot of hot button issues in Wisconsin that obviously touch on national hot button issues that the Supreme Court may be tasked in that state with deciding. That's why these Supreme Court races in Wisconsin have become such major deals over the last 15 years. This is the most expensive by far state judicial election in history. It culminates, as you say, not officially a Democrat-Republican race, but basically a Democratic-aligned candidate, a Republican-aligned candidate, the Democratic-aligned candidate Janet Protasewicz winning this thing basically by double digits. Wisconsin obviously is a state a little bit more than a year from now. We're going to be watching very closely in the 2024 presidential election. And if you start trying to map that out right now, it's hard to find a Republican victory formula in 2024 that does not include winning Wisconsin. So with that in mind, take a look at some of the patterns and trends that stand out from this map last night. One has to do with the suburban counties immediately outside of Milwaukee. They call them the WOW counties. It's Washington, it's Ozaukee, it's Washington. Now, these are still, as you can see on your screen, these are red counties. We've been talking nationally about suburban counties shifting away from the Republican Party, especially the Trump Republican Party.
Remember that map for later. Actually, later in this very clip. Side note, I cannot wait for Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski to retire. Because I like Willie Geist more than either of them, more than both of them combined. But look at that map. Those are districts that voted for Judge Janet. Excuse me, those are the blue is underrepresented, is what I'm attempting to say, but incredibly awkwardly, in terms of who's actually in the legislature. but he'll go into it in an eloquent way.
And in 2 of these 3 counties, that has been the story. Republicans are still winning them, but take a look at how the trend has been moving against Republicans. By the way, nearly 15% of all the votes statewide come out of these 3 counties. I'm going to show you Ozaukee County last night. This is, again, traditionally Republican, big suburban county. The Republican-aligned candidate wins it, but that's a margin of about 4.5 points there for Dan Kelly in Ozaukee County. Take a look at how this has moved in recent years. Donald Trump won here by 12 in 2020. Donald Trump won here by 19 in 2016. And if you go back just a decade, Mitt Romney was winning this thing almost 2-1 over Barack Obama. That's the kind of plurality Republicans used to count on out of a county like Ozaukee. They barely carry it in this race last night. It wasn't just there. Waukesha, this by far the biggest of those 3 wow counties I'm talking about. Again, 16 points.
Going to get to that last thing in a moment. I just saw a comment, though. Check out Maxwell Frost's speech on the floor today, making this Florida man proud. Oh, baby. We will. We certainly will. Also want to remind y'all, if we get to 15 likes, if we can do that, we will play the breaking news from the Midas Touch regarding Mike Pence testifying in the regarding Donald Trump's criminality. But anyway, let's let Steve Kornacki do his thing.
Thanks there for Kelly, but just rewind, go back in time a little bit here and see how these numbers have eroded for Republicans. Look at that. Barack Obama barely scraped 30% here in 2012. And again, last night, Kelly winning it. But this is not a traditional Republican victory margin. So those suburbs outside Milwaukee, they continue to move away from the Republican Party. Major problem for.
Okay, so what I wanted to get to. This shift is happening more and more from just these bright red states going bluer and bluer. Part of it is just the population aging. A lot of Republican voters were older voters, which means we lose some to just life happening. But it was also, look at the difference between Obama and Clinton. Negligible. Then look at Biden, 2020. It's a pretty big jump, all things considered. So we go from a 1% jump to a 5% jump. That is in what is it? Waukesha, oh Christ, in that county in Wisconsin. That's governance being watched. That's people actually following politics. I mean, with Trump, it was easy to follow politics because it was fascinating. Even though it was also dangerous, even though it was also terrifying, it was still fascinating. People are losing their taste for this nonsense. People who have been voting for these people, it's not just that, like, Republicans are following things closer. It's that somebody who says, yeah, I voted for Trump, is then grilled by their family members. Do you know that he did blank? Do you know that he did blank? Do you know that he did other blank? And if they don't follow politics, if they lived their whole lives in the United States and they were able to just vote based on a general vibe, not really paying attention to any issues, but just sort of saying, I like the cut of their jib, or, well, I listen to country music. I like the twang of the guitar, so obviously I don't want to have an awkward concert experience, so I vote Republican. That doesn't fly anymore. People are holding each other accountable. By the way, hold your community accountable. Make it, don't go into any one point thinking I need victory here, but say the truth. If you do have a family member that supports the fascist party in the U.S., let them know. If they ever speak positively about these people, you tell them the truth and wear them down over time. At the very least, you might be able to get some of them to say, I don't want this headache. I don't want to carry this identity anymore, because this identity no longer means that people will view me as somebody that cares about reasonable economics, which is what you used to be able to pretend to be all about if you voted Republican. We want, at the very least, you might convert them. You might have them voting Democrat. But if you don't, you might convince some of them to say, I would rather take on the identity of somebody who thinks politics is bad altogether. I'm not getting involved. Yeah, I didn't vote last election. I used to vote for the Republicans, but I don't want any of that business. That's also a victory. Let this man
the Republican Party in Wisconsin. Another area of concern for Republicans right here. You see these three counties. This is Brown County, Outagamie County. That's where Appleton is. This is Winnebago County, where Oshkosh is. All three of these are counties that Donald Trump actually carried in the 2020 presidential election. And then last night, you could see Protasewicz, the Democratic aligned candidate, actually pulled out victories in all of them. And then the final note, the biggest, most liberal, if you combine those things, size and liberalism, I would say the largest combination of size and liberalism in the state is Dane County, University of Wisconsin. It's where Madison is. And Democrats just continue. This is a decade or two story here to squeeze more and more votes out of Dane County. And you look at it last night, Protasewicz gets nearly 200,000 votes out of this county, 82% of the vote. That is, believe it or not, an improvement of more than 6 points over what Joe Biden got here in 2020. And look at this, 194,000 votes for the Democratic aligned candidate in Dane. You go to Milwaukee, which almost always produces the most Democratic votes in the state by far. Dane County last night produced more votes for the Democratic aligned candidate than Milwaukee County. That's a big, it used to be almost 2-1 in Milwaukee's favor. So again, these are big changes in Wisconsin.
Well, let's bring in somebody who knows so much about Wisconsin. He's a guy I always call on election nights to see how races are going. He's founder of the conservative website, The Bulwark, Charlie Sykes. Charlie, my God, it's what we say every day, right?
Y'all are getting a treat. I watched the first couple of minutes of this. I didn't realize they had Charlie Sykes on. I'm going to be fascinated to see what this guy, this old-fashioned GOP type, says about all this. It's going to be interesting.
Republicans behind Donald Trump are losing the suburbs of Atlanta. They're losing the suburbs of Philly. They're losing the suburbs of Milwaukee. And here, it's hard not to look at this race, which everybody knew on both sides. It's one of the most important races in Wisconsin's recent history, and the most expensive, and yet the Republican supported candidate got trounced by 11 points. And Charlie, it just seems the trend lines keep breaking against Trump Republicans.
Yes, that result is stunning. I mean, in Wisconsin, everything is close. So elections are decided by about 20,000 votes. This one was decided by nearly 200,000 votes. And Steve's analysis was absolutely brilliant. He put his fingers on all the major trends, including my home county of Ozaukee County. I am speaking to you from Ozaukee County, from the WOW counties. And to watch these counties go from overwhelmingly Republican to just barely Republican is really quite extraordinary. In Waukesha County, Dan Kelly needed to get about 69% of the vote. He only got about 58%. And this is, I mean, look, we can overanalyze this, but this is the Trump effect and this is the Dobbs effect. And the trend lines are very clear. And by the way, it's not just in the suburbs of Milwaukee. The so-called, bow counties, Brown County, Outagamie County, and Winnebago County. I mean, these have, heavily Roman Catholic populations.
I can't believe it was explained better by Charlie Sykes than me, but I got to admit it was. Yeah, when I was saying good governance, that's what I was talking about. If people saw how much, the garbage that was the Trump administration, people saw the garbage that was the Dobbs decision. Well done, Charlie Sykes. Ha! That didn't feel good to say.
Republicans pulled out all the stops. They understood what the stakes were. The pro-life organizations mobilized, and yet they lost this race by more than 10 points. This is a huge defeat for Republicans. It really does shake their hold on state government. But as you point out, the trend line could not be clearer. And if Republicans go into 2024 with a very, very strong, anti-Roe versus Wade position, they're going to see the same patterns, because you have people obviously in Wisconsin who turned out to vote, who are highly motivated to turn out and vote, but also you have voters in these suburbs who had voted traditionally Republican, who voted for a very liberal candidate for state Supreme Court last night, and that has got to send shockwaves through the Republican Party in a key swing state.
The hope of the Republicans would have been for a centrist, a charismatic centrist, an Obama type or a Clinton type. Obama governed as a centrist. He didn't campaign as one. Let me try that again. A Clinton type to rise up and take the mantle. And by the way, it's still possible. Still possible. The reason a centrist would have saved Republicans nationwide is because a charismatic centrist is because you need, if you're a Republican right now, someone who is going to convince MAGA voters that they care about something else. Because all the things MAGA voters care about are abhorrent to, like, regular, decent human beings. Now, that's not to say former MAGA people only care about abhorrent things. And that's not to say deeply conservative people only care about yada, yada, yada. That's not even to say that the MAGA voters themselves only in life care about abhorrent things. I'm sure they love their kids and their dog and believe that an adult should, I don't know, do charity once a month. But when it comes to voting, they support candidates exclusively that try to degrade the rights of Americans, and the rest of the country won't put up with it. The rest of the country didn't believe in QAnon conspiracies. I don't see that. And more so, what I see is Donald Trump still being the guy. I don't think they survive 2024, the Republican Party. Not as we ever knew it. Let's very quickly look at the class act that will not be in the Wisconsin Supreme Court right now. Let's look at his concession speech. Christ, here we go.
That in a circumstance like this, I would be able to concede to a worthy opponent.
He is conceding to a worthy opponent, for the record, because he's conceding, and Janet Protasiewicz, damn it, Janet Protasiewicz is a worthy judge. That clown is not. So says the people of Wisconsin.
But I do not have a worthy opponent to which I can concede.
Not no more, because you lost, punk.
This was the most deeply deceitful, dishonorable, despicable campaign I have ever seen run for the courts. It was truly beneath contempt.
Ah!
You see?
Is that?
Ha ha! Damn it, Joe. Why are you winning me over again? Oh, I spoke so bad about him. I was literally going to go get a beverage for which to drink sarcastically. Ooh, the tea. And, all right, since I'm handing out compliments, Mika's a snappy dresser, and I appreciate that. Damn it. I still like Willie Geist the most. All right, Joe, you earned some commentary. Let's hear it.
You see, kids.
I thought that was a candidate.
Yeah, it is. So,
They're
kids,
supposed to be.
here's the deal. if you want to have a future in politics or elected office, when you lose, I know what you've seen over the past 5, 6, 7 years, but when you lose, you are gracious. That actually, first of all, you should be gracious regardless of how ugly the race was, because it's not beanbag, as they say, it's hardball. And if you're going to step into a boxing ring, well, as I've told my family for years, expect your head to get knocked off of you. That's the profession that you choose, and elections can be awfully tough. But when it's over, and you graciously concede regardless. You find something to be gracious about, and then you move on. And as David Marinus wrote in the Bill Clinton book after he lost his race for governor, and the next morning he was out shaking hands, and people said the poor guy doesn't even realize he's lost. And somebody laughed in the campaign office and said, "Oh, no, you don't understand. He's already running for the next election."
I just saw the most accurate comment of all time. Wireless Mike, is it just me, or does Kelly look like Mordor's army general from Lord of the Rings? Holy crap. Yes. That is it. Gothmog, Lieutenant of Morgul. That is exactly what he looks like. Yeah. We're dropping it in the chat. I've never claimed to be a mature person. You can't say I lied to you here. That is exactly what he looks like. Of course, that is irrelevant. But you know, let's show it anyway. So what Joe is saying, I gotta say I disagree with slightly. He says you concede graciously. And you know what? Largely, I agree. And he's saying it's a strategic thing to concede graciously. And largely, I agree. However, the pretending like the other person is like there's nothing wrong with them. If, say, they are an anti-trans advocate. Pretending like, oh, look, we disagree about politics, but we all agree that we want the country to do well. That doesn't fly. Here's what we were talking about. Oh, never mind. That's just a picture of the candidate himself. I don't know where to get a picture of that the general from Lord of the Rings. But if I find one, I'll certainly put it up. Anyway, conceding is, yes, you have to concede. And yes, you should be gracious. But you shouldn't, if you are a Democrat, let's say, you shouldn't go out of your way to try to appear like you're doing that if there's a serious problem. If the situation were reversed, I wouldn't want Janet Protasewicz to say, everything will be fine. This is fine. Because it wouldn't have been fine. I would want her to talk about ways that we can staunch the bleeding of democracy outside of relying on the Supreme Court. Part of the offense here, part of what's so classless about this guy, is that there is a difference between the two candidates, and the state will be fine, just fine, with Protasewicz in the seat. And she ran an honest campaign. And he is, in fact, lying about the way she conducted herself. And that has to be treated differently than if it was than if it was a normal race. It's a bit of nitpickery, sure, but it's how I feel. So what is the relevance of all this? How do we now use this big win? Because it's All we've got here, from what they're saying, is that we can breathe a little bit easier with our democracy. And okay, you know what? Fair's fair. That's true. We can breathe a little easier, and that's good. But it is the Democratic and the centrist way to just barely escape doom and then rest. Nope. No. What we have right now is a liberal majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The Wisconsin state districts. Oh, boy. The Wisconsin districts are wildly gerrymandered. To put it concisely, I'm going to skip the whole history of this, but there is an opportunity, and if you guys take an interest in this, you want a more detailed background, all right, we'll do it another time. But there is an opportunity right now to redistrict before the next election. It can be done. The U.S. Supreme Court kicked a case back to Wisconsin and basically left us undecided. What needs to happen is somebody from Wisconsin, and I'm going to put some pressure on you here, somebody from Wisconsin needs to file a case objecting to the districts. That's simple. You need standing. You need to live in that state. But other than that, you're good. I've got a link to organizations. Do I have that link? Yes, I've got a link to organizations that will help you get yourself an attorney who will help you get representation in court. But now we need to give Judge Janet something to work with, a case to rule on, so that she can determine, along with the rest of the sane members of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, if Wisconsin is unfairly gerrymandered, if the way that the districts are drawn is fair. I'll tell you, it's not fair. This should be a relatively easy case. And in fact, it can be fast-tracked because the upcoming election can be cited as a reason to fast-track it. But we need the case filed quickly so that it can be done, resolved, and the districts redrawn in time for the next election. Michigan has become, and I'm telling you this having experienced every second of it, Michigan has become a better state to exist in since we got rid of gerrymandering. You can have that in Wisconsin. I promise you, if you're in Wisconsin right now, you are dealing with a ton of problems you simply don't need to be, because a ton of your state's resources are going to make rich people richer instead of going to taking care of your problems. Roads being smoother. School supplies occasionally being free. Little things that add up. You know, roads being safer means less dings to your car, less popped tires from abhorrent potholes. Things like this add up. We're going to look at one other thing on this topic. After reading some of these comments. Oh, Wicked Foxy Dragon says, I'm really late tonight. No worries. That's why we got the VOD. Plus, we got a whole lot to talk about. So I'm looking forward to doing a longer stream today. Joe Scarborough says Jim Green is an opportunist. Yes, he is. Wireless Mike says, and Wisconsin just became a better state to live in literally overnight. Yes, and now let's capitalize on it. I'm not going to lie to y'all. Part of this is just blind Michigander pride. But there was a video done that explains how this looks very well. It's called Who Draws the Lines? Link is in the description, but we're going to play part of it right now.
So every 10 years, every state has to redistrict, and that just means that you have to redraw your election district lines. And that, determines who you get to vote for.
Districts need to be roughly equal in population. And because population changes, we know that it changes. People are born, people die, people move into locations, they move out of locations. We need to adjust the districts to those population changes.
Over the last few years, people have started understanding that the way you draw district lines actually determines more than who you get to vote for. If lines are drawn a certain way by politicians, then our politicians really can choose who gets to vote for them. So they get to choose the outcome of elections.
What she just said is so well put that it deserves a little underlining. What she's saying is a lot of states, which Wisconsin is one of the primary ones right now. We mentioned them earlier as well. Utah, North Carolina, states where you're going to see a lot of problems, as a matter of fact. They're gerrymandered, and that means the people who get put in office by popular vote are choosing their voters. That's what gerrymandering essentially comes down to. What she didn't say, I'm going to say right now, and pin this in your mind. It is because districts are drawn by the legislature. Districts are drawn by the people that get voted in. What you need in every single state, by the way, we should be eventually, and we'll work on this later, but we will eventually be working on getting a federal law in that says the people who are getting voted into office cannot be the ones that draw district lines. It needs to be through all 50 states, an independent body. But on a state-by-state basis, this is just a fight we have to have right now. Wisconsin is the next one. An independent body needs to draw the district lines. It is that simple.
As opposed to voters choosing their politicians.
So in Wisconsin, we have politicians in charge of drawing districts that will be used to elect them for the most part. So as you can imagine, the politicians in our state legislature have their own interests that come into play when they're proposing these districts. They want to make sure that they can get reelected, that their political party stays in power. That's one of the reasons that we've seen such an extreme gerrymander in our state over the past decade, and why so many people across our state have spoken out against it.
I feel that after 2010, when they redrew the district boundaries, it affected me greatly. I didn't realize it at the time. I was used to having legislators who lived in the community, who were accessible. So this new district split the district that I was in and put me in a district that is very different from what I was used to. The legislators that are in my district, I don't feel that they really represent my interests. I don't see them in my neighborhood. I don't see them in my community. And so I think it has had a very negative effect on me and my neighbors and the city of Milwaukee.
Senate Bill 621, relating to legislative redistricting, by Senator Lemke and others.
In Wisconsin, it's the legislature that has the initial responsibility to draw new state legislative districts and congressional districts.
The governor is also involved in redistricting in our state. He or she has the duty to approve the maps that are drawn by the legislature or reject them.
If you have unified control over both the legislature and the governor's office by the same political party, then it allows that political party to seek an opportunity to advantage itself. That's the partisan gerrymandering that comes into play, and that's what we saw in 2011. The districts were drawn up in secret They were rolled out by the majority party, the Republicans, just days before they were presented on the floor of the legislature, and the legislature was going to vote on them. So the people of Wisconsin really did not have any opportunity whatsoever in 2011 to make their views known on what they thought about those proposed districts.
Wisconsin's my home state, but in this instance, I am not proud of the way that Wisconsin handles this core function of civic society. This year, Wisconsin had what we call an impasse, where the legislature is held by Republicans and the governor is a Democrat in Wisconsin, and there was no effort between those two entities to try to come to some sort of compromise. And instead, the Wisconsin State Supreme Court was called upon to adjudicate the case.
It makes me so annoyed that there even needs to be compromise on something like this. Is it fair or not? Believe it or not, I look forward to a day where we have made our process of electing officials so fair that the individual beliefs of the politicians become irrelevant, because politicians start acting more like lawyers and less like the traditional American politician. I just mean, like, they represent, like, you would be happy to elect somebody formerly from another party because they represented, even if they were somebody that voted against everything you believe in, but they represented what the people of their district believe so well. And it wouldn't be a shameful thing for them to say, like, I got rid of all of these taxes which you love, and now, because I've moved to a different area, I'll be that effective in getting them put right back. I actually look forward to that, because that'll mean the people are in control. They're holding the leash. They're not the ones in the collar. That's the dream. But it's not going to happen until we get rid of stuff like this.
I think the community's voice and the spirit of the community needs to be taken into consideration. I think a lot of times lines are drawn based off of political agendas, how people are able to maintain or gain even more power. And unfortunately, when people are able to draw themselves and to gerrymander themselves into safe districts, they don't have to actually listen to their constituents.
Overall, I would say if I were to grade the Wisconsin process for adopting new redistricting plans, I would give it a decided F to F-. Certainly no voters were involved in the process, and it is just hard to even compare that to the type of process we saw play out in states like Michigan, where the real central focus of the process was the voters and the communities, and making sure that their interests were represented and that the politics was stripped out entirely.
Hey, I know that gal.
Historically, Michigan has been one of the worst gerrymandered states in the country. We had what a lot of states have, which is politicians drawing our election district lines every 10 years. No matter how people voted in Michigan, kind of our election outcomes would always be the same. So what we did in 2018,
it really wasn't fun.
Was we started a citizens movement, and we wanted to make sure to take politicians out of redistricting and put citizens in the role of drawing our district lines. We have a citizens commission, so it's everyday Michiganders. Politicians can't serve on our commission, neither.
Going a little hard on that root beer, good Lord. Yeah, what she has just said right there is, again, what we need to do in every single state. Politicians should not be drawing the lines and deciding who gets to vote for them. That's insane.
Can lobbyists or special interests?
and what excited me most about it is that citizens were able to have their own voice heard by fellow citizens, us as commissioners, and it wasn't politicians. It weren't people that were, paid large salaries or have been doing this all their lives. These were people with fresh ideas and real lived histories coming together to make something different happen in the state of Michigan.
If it had been done that way in the past, we wouldn't have this much of.
All right, and they show, yes, all of the citizens who stood up, some of the groups that were part of this. Let's jump back to this.
Legislature is drawing the lines. They're sitting at a computer and picking the voters that they want to have in their district, that they think will best suit their political needs. And that's not the way that this should happen. We are a democracy, and in a democracy, the voters should be choosing the politicians. The politicians should not be choosing the voters.
We need someone from Wisconsin to get this in court. We need a new case. Got to get picked up again. The reason being, it got knocked around so much that that the old court case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, then knocked back to Wisconsin, and then it just died. This is from Wisconsin Public Radio. Here's one politician talking about the Protasiewicz campaign back when, before this was decided. With the political stakes high, Protasiewicz, the candidate supported by Democrats, this is Protasiewicz talking, has made clear how she feels about the current Republican draw on district lines. Let's be clear here. The maps are rigged, she said at a candidate forum in January. Absolutely, positively rigged. They do not reflect the people in the state. She does clarify, I can't ever tell you what I'm going to do on a particular case, Protasiewicz said, but I can tell you my values. So look, give her that case. Give her that case. You have to be from Wisconsin. But here's an attorney, Jeff Mandel, board president of the group Law Forward, and attorney at Stanford Rosenbaum in Madison. He says there are several areas of the state constitution that could be grounds for a challenge. There is no hard and fast plan, he warns. There is no complaint or document that is written currently, but there are plenty of conversations going on about what such a lawsuit would look like. A challenge could be based on the state constitution's redistricting provisions, he said, but also on other areas relating to voting. You could also imagine claims that maybe it violates the right to vote, he said. Is the right to vote merely the right to stand on a line on election day and cast a ballot, or is it a right to cast a meaningful ballot? Rick Eisenberg, president of the conservative Wisconsin yada 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 Institute for Law and Liberty. So it's a think tank. The problem, I'm just going to read his quote because we started. The problem is that there really isn't anything in the Wisconsin Constitution other than a requirement that the maps be contiguous and compact, he said. And the thing about the maps in Wisconsin is that they are contiguous and compact. I agree that they're contiguous. I don't agree that they're compact. Look at the shape of the county in Milwaukee that was being looked at. That thing looks like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It's oblong. There is plenty to object to. You got to do it. If you live in Wisconsin, and I'm delighted to say, fascinated surprised and delighted to say that some people that watch this yacht channel are from Wisconsin. Hey, folks, get yourself in court. Get in court. Use the link in the description. Contact, which one did I go with? There's a couple of groups you could contact, but the one I thought was most likely to help you out and provide you with attorneys and possibly even provide you with funding for attorneys. Campaign Legal Center. The ones who made that video. They have a website. I see now that I have not included the link to their website. I will update that, and you will have the link to their website. There's also fairelectionsproject.org. F it, we're going to put them both in. Take your pick. Contact both of them if you want. Start this court case. It's a wicked good idea. And you happen to know you have a rare advantage. The Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. Duh, that's the number one link we're going to use. But also the Campaign Legal Center, because come on, they're a national organization and they're very good at what they do. But the point being, contact one of these groups and get this case put into court. You have the rare opportunity here. You have the rare advantage of knowing that a judge out there, at least broadly, agrees with your assessment of the problem. If you feel that the gerrymandering is unfair, that's awesome. Now you just need a coherent case put forward in the court so this can get handled. And you got to do it quick. Got to be quick, as the pros say, because this is going to affect massively what happens in just 1 year. Just a year. It's going to be time to massively shake up, potentially, the state legislature. And if you're sick to death of living in a state whose map is blood red, even though it's very much a purple state, you can do something about it. What you can do is take it to court. So take it to court. You just did. You've already done the hardest part, is putting the right judges in the court. Well done. The whole separate conversation about whether we should even be voting for judges, but it doesn't matter right now. It's done. So use it. Well, folks, I wouldn't say we put it off, but I think it's just about time we read these charges, because I've been looking at them as people would look at more conventional pornography. Did he just say right meow, says Wireless Mike? Oh, I hope so. I'll tell you, in my salesman days, I did try to work that in whenever I could. Ooh, interesting. Let's start, says Jim Green, with Citizens United. Yes, that is in order to deal with big money in politics, you might think, oh God, we have to do on a national scale what Wisconsin just did at the state level and essentially get the right judges. But I have bad news for you. The bad news is that these decisions that were made screwed us so thoroughly that there is almost no way to undo the decisions that the old Supreme Courts put in place. Not that it's totally impossible. If we had a very, very left-leaning court, maybe. It's just not practical. Why is it bad news? Because it has forced our hand. The most practical way that that we can undo Citizens United, undo these decisions, is to change the very constitution of our country. Happened before. It happened in times like these for reasons like these. For example, the adding in and undoing of the amendment that dealt with alcohol. It was in our Constitution for a while that you couldn't drink alcohol, and then it was in our Constitution again that you could. It was because there was a massive social and political movement behind it. Well, right now we have that. Thank God we have that. The group that will help you get big money out of politics, right here. Citizens Take Action. And it is about to be in the description as well. Put it in there. All right, at the very bottom of the description, I have now included the plan for getting big money out of politics, for undoing Citizens United. There would be a constitutional amendment. Yeah, we're going sidetrack. This is more important than dunking on Trump, because this is why we got Trump, one of the reasons. Use that. Join up with Citizens Take Action. Because the plan is to get an amendment to the Constitution put in place that prevents our votes from being drowned out by big money. All right, I very badly now want to read for you 34 pages. No, 34 charges, 16 pages regarding 45's first 34. This psychopath has got in so much trouble. I cannot hardly believe it. Hold up while I load this. In fact, let me make this easier on editing, Jake. Consider this a 20 to 30 second break while I load this up properly. It's a PDF. It's a little more difficult. Hey, we're back. So this is the 16, these are the charges in the, oh God, there we, okay. Listed out on a CNN article, rather embedded in a CNN article if you're interested in reading their take on it. Okay, good. I'm going to read through these with y'all. It is a hell of a lot of fun, for one, and two, I think it's going to help you counteract a lot of right-wing talking points. And actually, as long as we're here in the screen, before we get into it, I want to put this in the right context for you. Number one, why? Why do we care about this? To prove that a president a former president is subject to the same laws that we are. Remember that above all else, Just that. To prove that a president is subject to the same laws as everyone else. Is this the most amazing case? Nope. Nope. The most interesting case? No. The most likely to get in conviction? Honestly, maybe. But the conviction itself would be next to inconsequential. Because the time he's looking at for this, the punishment he's looking at, remember, no matter how obvious his other crimes were, he is a first offender in the eyes of the law. You're not looking at much. But and I misread it yesterday, it's 34 counts all for the same thing. It's different counts of the same crime over and over and over again. Why is that important? Well, when I read through this, keep recalling this fact. During sentencing, they are going to, I'm sorry, I think I have an animal outside my house. It's wild. I hope you can't hear that scratching. During sentencing, if he's found guilty, let's just say he's found guilty for every single one. Indisputable. He doesn't get any of these charges knocked off. His sentence is going to be the same, most likely, as it would have been if he was found guilty for even one of these things. So, for our purposes, in terms of seeking justice, you only need one of these to hit, and you get the same result as if all of them hit. I note that the supporters of Trump haven't been making the case that he's innocent. So you're not going to get him saying like, well, it must have all been nonsense. No. The damage to Trump that I would like done will already be done because the truth will come out in court. And if he beats all of them, it's going to be on a technicality. What else is true about this? It's taking place in December. Is that a bad thing? No. I want people to be able to say he got a fair shake. So December is that's a normal time for this to be seen. For the scale of it. And there's still plenty of time before 24 with that. And most, I think, importantly, other cases will be going on by then. And once they start, they got to be seen through to the end. Alvin Bragg, in my opinion, has done what we needed him to do in the interest of justice, which is file the GD charges. That said, all of that said, that's context for this. Now let's look at specifically what he's saying happened, what they're going to try to prove in a court of law. The grand jury of the County of New York, by this indictment, accuses the defendant of the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree, in violation of Penal Law 17510, committed as follows. The defendant in the County of New York and elsewhere, on or about February 14, 2017, with the intent to defraud and intent to commit another crime and aid and conceal the commission thereof, made and caused a false entry in the business records of an enterprise, to wit, an invoice from Michael Cohen dated February 14, Happy Valentine's Day, Melania, 2017, marked as a record of the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust and kept and maintained by the Trump Organization. Second count. And the grand jury aforesaid by this indictment further accuses the defendant of the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree in violation of yada yada. The defendant in the county of New York and elsewhere on or about February 14, with the intent to defraud, intent to commit another crime, and aid and conceal the commission thereof, made and caused a false entry into the business records of an enterprise, to wit, an entry in the detailed general ledger for the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust, bearing voucher number blah, 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 and kept and maintained by the Trump Organization. Relevant things learned so far. Donald J. Trump, Revocable Trust, and Trump Organization tied into this. Trump Org already, the Trump Org company, already found guilty in court. I believe the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust involves his kids, and I find it interesting that they're not named, but presumably their knowledge of this couldn't be proven, so we move on. Third count. Same thing. Skipping down to where it changes. Being a voucher number, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it's the exact same wording. Third count, same thing. And fourth count, same thing. These are all the entries. Shoot, do I not have? Wait a minute. Stand by, folks. Let me check one thing. I do want to make sure that I'm reading you the thing that I first saw yesterday, which has some. There's a little piece of this in the statement of facts that I haven't seen anybody else talk about yet, and I think it's probably the most interesting part. Oh, I hope I can play this for you. Let's try this again. I don't want to read all 34 counts because they're almost the exact same thing. Let me put the statement of facts in. Okay, here we go. You really gonna do this to me? Oofa doofa. Hey, there we go. All right. Let me just read the statement of facts. Here's the 16 pages. All right. The defendant, Donald J. Trump, repeatedly and fraudulently falsified New York business records to conceal criminal conduct that hid damaging information from the voting public during the 2016 presidential election. Right there. Earlier, we had somebody ask during the Trump arraignment, this is a victimless crime. How can Stormy Daniels be a victim? Right there, according to Alvin Bragg, the victim is you. The victim is me. The victim is that guy that loves Trump so very much. It hid damaging information from the voting public, us, during the 2016 presidential election. From August 2015 to December 2017, the defendant orchestrated a scheme with others to influence the 2016 presidential election by identifying and purchasing negative information about him to suppress its publication and benefit the defendant's electoral prospects. In order to execute the unlawful scheme, the participants violated election laws. Let me read that again. The participants violated election laws. And what was the election he was running in? The election for president of the United States. Don't let anybody tell you that this is not a serious case. Alvin Bragg, whether you think he's going to be able to prove it or not, whether you think it actually happened or not, Alvin Bragg is saying that in a presidential election, one of the candidates violated election laws. That's a big damn deal. Made and caused false entries into the business records of various entities in New York. The participants also took steps that mischaracterized for tax purposes the true nature of the payments made in furtherance of the scheme. One component of the scheme was that, at the defendant's request, a lawyer who then worked for the Trump Organization, Cohen, as special counsel to the defendant, called Lawyer A, covertly paid $130,000 to an adult film actress shortly before the election to prevent her from publicizing a sexual encounter with the defendant. Lawyer A, which is Cohen, made the $130,000 payment through a shell corporation he set up and funded at a bank in Manhattan. The fact that it was through a shell corporation tells you a little bit about the consciousness of guilt. This payment, although they could say that was Michael Cohen's consciousness of guilt, but I believe we're going to have Michael Cohen testifying. The payment was illegal. Oh, by the way, there's also a recording of Donald Trump hearing about how this shell corporation will be set up, so we know Trump was aware of it. This payment was illegal, and Lawyer A has since pleaded guilty to making an illegal campaign contribution and served time in prison. Further, false entries were made in New York business records to effectuate this payment, separate and apart from the New York business records used to conceal the payment. After the election, the defendant reimbursed Lawyer A for the illegal payment through a series of monthly checks. The first from the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust, the defendant's trust, a trust created under the laws of New York, which held the Trump Organization entity assets after the defendant was elected president. We're going to get back to that in just a second. And then from the defendant's bank account. Okay, so when I was talking about his kids earlier, that's what I was talking about. I'm surprised that the payments were made through this thing, and yet his kids aren't co-defendants. It's possible. Doesn't seem likely to me, but it's possible that they're going to testify, but I don't know. It could just be me, but I don't know how they're not involved then. And then from the defendant's bank account, each check was processed by the Trump Organization, and each check was disguised as a payment for legal services rendered. So the disguised is important there. Again, it's consciousness of guilt. For the legal services rendered in a given month of 2017 pursuant to a retainer agreement. The payment records kept and maintained by the Trump Organization were false New York business records. That right there is where the essence of the 34 counts comes from. They lied about the business they were doing. In truth, there was no retainer agreement, and Lawyer A was not being paid for legal services rendered in 2017. The defendant caused his entity's business records to be falsified to disguise his and others' criminal conduct. When they say, and others' criminal conduct, you can expect either the people will be charged or the people will be testifying. Again, I don't know what's up with the kids there. Maybe they just weren't interested in it. But what they were interested in, certainly, was Pecker, Cohen, everybody else who could be charged with similar crimes. The defendant, background. The defendant is the beneficial owner of a collection of business entities known by the trade name the Trump Organization, which has recently also been found guilty. The Trump Organization comprises approximately 500 separate entities that, among other business activities, own and manage hotels, golf courses, commercial real estate, condominium developments, and other properties. Trump Organization is headquartered, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to encourage hate mail to go there, even though they are hated. From approximately June 2015 to November 2016, the defendant was a candidate for the office of President of the United States. Sure. On January 20, 2017, he became President of the United States, to the country's eternal shame. The scheme. Number one, the catch and kill scheme to suppress negative information. During and in furtherance of his candidacy for president, boom, right there. In furtherance of his candidacy for president. The defendant and others agreed to identify and suppress negative stories about him. Two parties to this agreement have admitted to committing illegal conduct in connection with the scheme. In August 2018, Lawyer A pleaded guilty to 2 federal crimes involving illegal campaign contributions and subsequently served time in prison. In addition, in August 2018, America Media Inc., AMI, makes its first appearance. A media company that owned and published magazines and supermarket tabloids, including the National Enquirer, never buy another copy of that, admitted in a non-prosecution agreement that it made a payment to a source of a story to ensure that the source did not publicize damaging allegations about the defendant before the 2016 presidential election and thereby influence that election. Part A of that, the 2015 Trump Tower meeting. In June 2015, the defendant announced his candidacy for president of the United States. Soon after, in August 2015, the defendant met with lawyer A, Michael Cohen, and AMI's chairman and executive officer, the AMI CEO, also known as David Picard, at Trump Tower in New York County. So now we have the place where this happened and the jurisdiction as well. At the meeting, the AMI CEO agreed to help with the defendant's campaign, saying that he would act as the eyes and ears for the campaign by looking out for negative stories about the defendant and alerting Lawyer A before the stories were published. The AMI CEO also agreed to publish negative stories about the defendant's competition for the election. Man, that right there is detailing crimes beyond what are even being charged here. That is not the way you organize a campaign for president. Suppressing the doorman story. A few months later, in or about November 2015, the AMI CEO learned that a former Trump Tower doorman was trying to sell information regarding a child the defendant allegedly fathered out of wedlock. At Picard's direction, AMI negotiated and signed an agreement to pay the doorman $30,000, good God, to acquire exclusive rights to the story. AMI falsely characterized this payment in AMI's books and records, including in its general ledger. Two things stand out. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. Foxy, you are our resident legal expert. Please tell me if this goes against your understanding. Picard has not been mentioned yet by name. I believe he is mentioned later, oddly enough. But to me, what we've read so far tells me Picard is testifying against Trump. Because there's Picard committing this same crime. And it benefits both him and Trump because he gets paid as well, theoretically. But to me, this says we can expect Picard to testify. Let me know if you agree with that. Or if not that Picard will testify, but that this says, or you would read from that Picard is likely to testify. AMI purchased the information from the doorman without fully investigating his claims, but the AMI CEO, Picard, directed the deal to take place because of his agreement with defendant and Lawyer A. When AMI later concluded that the story was not true, the AMI CEO wanted to release the doorman from the agreement. However, Lawyer A instructed the AMI CEO, Picard, not to release the doorman until after the presidential election. Do you remember when Trump said that it was to protect his wife? They tend to advise people not to talk about a court case outside of court. There's one reason right there. Trump said this was to keep my wife from finding out. What does the election have to do then with that? Not a damn thing. And yet, Michael Cohen suggested that they wait until after the election to release that information. Now I'm going to wonder if Michael Cohen in court will say, yeah, because Donald Trump said that. Suppressing Woman One's account. About 5 months before the election, in or about June 2016, the editor-in-chief of the National Enquirer and AMI's chief content officer contacted Lawyer A, Cohen, about a woman who alleged she had a sexual relationship with the defendant while he was married. This is not Stormy Daniels. The AMI editor-in-chief updated Lawyer A regularly about the matter over text and by telephone. Uh-oh. I bet they have those text messages. The defendant did not want this information to become public because he was concerned about the effect it could have on his candidacy. Well, there it is. If they can prove that, they got him. Thereafter, the defendant, Pecker, and Cohen, let's just say it again. Thereafter, Trump, Pecker, and Cohen had a series of discussions about who should pay off Woman 1 to secure her silence. AMI ultimately paid $150,000 to Woman 1 in exchange for her agreements not to speak about the alleged sexual relationship, as well as for 2 magazine cover features of Woman 1 and a series of articles that would be published under her byline. AMI falsely characterized this payment in AMI's books and records, including its general ledger. The AMI CEO agreed to the deal after discussing it with both defendant and lawyer A, and on the understanding from lawyer A that the defendant or the Trump organization would reimburse AMI. In a conversation captured in an audio recording in approximately September 2016 concerning Woman 1's account, the defendant, Trump, and lawyer A, Cohen, discussed how to obtain the rights to Woman 1's account from AMI and how to reimburse them for the payment. What's interesting to me here is it sounds like Picard was a snake dealing with snakes, and they all knew they were snakes. And Picard, to ensure that Trump paid him, would have published those stories if he didn't. It's very interesting, and I do think Trump will try to lean into the blackmaily nature of that. That might be how he escapes. We'll see. In a conversation captured in audio, we talked about that. Lawyer A told the defendant he would open up a company for the transfer of Woman 1's account and other information, and stated that he had spoken to the chief financial officer for the Trump organization about how to set the whole thing up. The defendant asked, "So what do we got to pay for this? $150?" and suggested paying by cash. What a clown. When lawyer A disagreed, the defendant then mentioned payment by check. After the conversation, lawyer A created a shell company called Resolution Consultants, LLC on or about September 30, 2016. I wonder if that company still technically exists and if Cohen is still the owner of it. Less than 2 months before the election, on or about September 30, the AMI CEO signed an agreement in which AMI agreed to transfer the rights transfer its rights to Woman 1's account to lawyer A's shell company for $125,000. However, after the assignment agreed was signed, but before the reimbursement took place, Picard consulted with AMI's general counsel and then told lawyer A that the deal to transfer the rights to lawyer A's shell company was off. Ooh. Snakes dealing with snakes. Good Lord. After the payment. All right. Suppressing Woman 2's account. This is Stormy Daniels, I believe. About 1 month before the election, on or about October 7th, news broke that the defendant had been caught on tape saying to the host of Access Hollywood, Billy Bush, "I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it." What a scumbag. You can do anything. Grab them by the genitals. You can do anything. The evidence this, Jesus Christ, this is going to affect the upcoming civil rape case as well. The evidence shows that both the defendant and his campaign staff were concerned that the tape would harm his viability as a candidate and reduce his standing with female voters in particular. Again, it doesn't matter if it actually would have. He thought it would have. That's what's important. Shortly after, or rather, Bragg says he believes he can prove that Trump thought that. Shortly after that tape became public, the AMI editor-in-chief contacted the AMI CEO about another woman, Woman 2, who alleged she had a sexual encounter with the defendant while he was married. The AMI CEO told the editor-in-chief to notify lawyer A. Other things of interest here. We might not just hear from David Picard. We might hear from his employees. The witnesses in this are going to be diverse. It would appear this was a not-so-secretive secret mission. But the defendant directed lawyer A to delay making a payment to Woman 2 as long as possible. Oh, Jesus, this cheap guy. He instructed Lawyer A that if they could delay the payment until after the election, they could avoid paying altogether, because at that point, it would not matter if the story became public, as reflected in emails and text messages. As reflected in emails and text messages, in other words, written records between and among Lawyer A, Lawyer B, and the AMI editor-in-chief. Lawyer A attempted to delay making payments as long as possible. Ooh boy, folks. All of this hinges on the why of it. Why did he do these things? Was there criminal intent? Trump has said, at least his public defense of this, which I'm sure is going to be very different than what he has the guts to say to a judge. But Trump has said that this was about not wanting to upset his wife. Here he is, apparently saying, and they're going to have to prove this in court, they're going to say they're going to do the he said, yada, yada. But here he is, here's Alvin Bragg saying that he wanted to delay the payments until after the election so that they could get away with not paying them at all. What does that tell you about why he was doing these payments in the first place? It was about the election. It wasn't about his wife. And if Lawyer A is just doing the bidding of Donald Trump, he appears to be doing, what does Lawyer A care if it's about the election or not? He doesn't. Remember, we only need one of these counts to hit. Just one. The defendant directed Lawyer A to delay, ultimately, with pressure mounting and the election approaching, the defendant did agree to the payoff and directed Lawyer A to proceed. Lawyer A discussed the deal with the defendant and to the CFO. The defendant, Trump, did not want to make the $130,000 payment himself, good Lord, and asked Lawyer A and the Trump org CFO to find a way to make the payment. After discussing various payment options with the Trump org CFO, Lawyer A agreed he would make the payment. Before making the payment, Lawyer A confirmed with the defendant that the defendant would pay him back. Interesting. Let's pause for a moment and check out those comments. Also see if you guys are just bored to tears by reading all this. In Australia, says Perd Beer, it's also essentially politicians appointing judges, but there is much more pushback for independence. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Patrick Kibido says, I love the fact that the statute of limitations would have run out if Trump hadn't changed his permanent residence. By defying New York, he effectively by defying New York, he effectively stopped the clock on his crimes. Yeah, that is delightful. And it's also, there's a bitter irony for this guy in that the disease that he helped spread in the country, the actual literal disease, affected things so much that it also increased the statute of limitations on some of this, because COVID restrictions delayed a lot of court cases. Let's see if we got a word from Foxy. Cohen, Wicked Foxy Dragon says Cohen was smart to record conversations. Yep. He knew who his client was. Mars Falcon says Pekar has an immunity deal. He must do all they ask or have it rescinded. I think so. Yeah. And Foxy Dragon says he was given a free pass if he testifies. I think you are correct. In fact, I think that's, am I remembering correctly? I think that's how it has to go. I think you are automatically, if you testify, given immunity in New York. Now that I say it out loud, I'm not so sure. Anyway, regardless, let's knock on with this because we're about to get juicy, and I am a petty batch. On or about October 26th, shortly after speaking with the defendant on the phone, Lawyer A opened a bank account in Manhattan in the name of Essential Consultants, LLC, a new shell company he had created to effectuate the payment. He then transferred $131,000 from his personal home equity line of credit, HELOC, into that account. On or about October 27th, Lawyer A wired that from Essential Consultants, LLC account in New York to Lawyer B to suppress Woman 2's account. Okay. The defense of this has got to be just to avoid a jury trial altogether. Because if they start hashing that stuff out in front of a jury, eventually it will come down to just common sense. Because Trump will have to say, Cohen just decided to make this all about the election. I didn't tell him to do all these things. My name isn't on all these things. It's Cohen's name on all these things. It's Cohen writing the text. It's Cohen writing the emails. And the jury will have to decide, did Cohen just go wildly rogue? Obviously not. Obviously, it was for Donald Trump's benefit. Obviously, he was working for Donald Trump. It cannot, if Trump actually wants to beat this, it cannot go to the jury. He's got to stop it before it gets there. And they're going to try. This thing ain't going to be in court until December, but you're going to hear about it a ton until then because they're going to try everything under the sun to get it thrown out. And I just don't see how they do because there is a mountain of evidence. What we've described so far, emails, companies being started, there's a trail of information. This is amazing. Post-election communications. On November 8, 2016, the defendant won the presidential election and became the president-elect by lying to America with crime. Thereafter, AMI released both the doorman and Woman 1 from their non-disclosure agreements. Why? They will ask David Pecker, did you do that after the election? The defendant was inaugurated as president on January 20, 2017. Folks, it's about to get wild. Between Election Day and Inauguration Day, during the period of the defendant's transition to his role as president, the defendant met with the AMI CEO privately in Trump Tower in Manhattan. Do you remember when his transition team was set up in Trump Tower? The defendant thanked Picard for handling the stories of the doorman and Woman 1 and invited him to the inauguration. I'm going to look through that footage to see if I can spot him. In the summer of 2017, the defendant invited Picard to the White House for dinner to thank him for his help during the campaign. Hey, here's something that wasn't charged in New York that Merrick Garland could charge. So, silly as it may seem, that dinner, thanking the guy for his help in the campaign, can be seen as using the presidency to pay a criminal for their criminal services. It might seem petty. It might even be petty. But it's important. If we want to restore honor to the presidency, it's stuff like that we've got to officially say can't fly. The defendant falsified business records. Here we go. Now we are in the game, folks. Shortly after being elected president, the defendant arranged to reimburse Lawyer A for the payments he made on Trump's behalf. And around January 2017, Trump Organization CFO and Lawyer A met to discuss how Lawyer A would be reimbursed for the money he paid to ensure Woman 2's silence. The Trump Organization CFO asked Lawyer A, Cohen, to bring, I'm just going to try to remember to switch their names, to bring a copy of a bank statement for Essential Consultants account showing his $130,000 payment. Trump Org CFO and Lawyer A agreed to a total repayment amount of $420,000. They reached that particular figure by adding the $130,000 payments to a $50,000 payment from another expense which is also questionable and I would also like looked into, which we should maybe ask Michael Cohen about in the live chat of the next Midas Touch stream. The question would be, what was that $50,000 payment? Can you talk about that? Are they going to talk about that? That's not charged. So, all right, anyway. By adding those two things together for a total of $180,000, the TO CFO then doubled that amount to $360,000 so that Lawyer A could characterize the payment as income on his tax returns instead of a reimbursement, and Lawyer A would be left with $180,000 after paying approximately 50% in income taxes. Oh, it should be so much higher. Finally, the Trump Organization CFO added on an additional $60,000 as supplemental year-end bonus. So there is why Michael Cohen did this thing. There's Michael Cohen's motivation written out on paper with bank records to follow. It's not because he was so desperate for Donald Trump to become president. It's because he got paid money. It was for money. That is why he did it. The defendant, in other words, so it's going to be even harder to say Michael Cohen went rogue and did this on his own. No. Michael Cohen very much did this at the behest of Donald Trump. It appears that Alvin Bragg is saying he can prove. The defendant, the Trump Organization CFO, right, Trump Organization CFO, and Cohen then agreed that Lawyer A would be paid CFO, that's the CFO is Weisselberg, right? Yeah. Would be paid $420,000 through 12 monthly payments of $35,000 over the course of 2017. Do you remember back when Michael Cohen was bragging about being Trump's personal attorney? That's when he was getting these payments. I think it's interesting to look back on those old news stories. Each month, Lawyer A was to send an invoice to the defendant through Trump Organization employees, falsely requesting payment of $35,000 for legal services rendered in a given month of 2017 pursuant to a retainer agreement. At no point did Lawyer A have a retainer agreement with the defendant or the Trump Organization. Christ. Early in February 2017, the defendant, Lawyer A, met in the Oval Office. They conducted this business in the White House. In the White House, they conducted this business. And confirmed this repayment arrangement. On or about, here we go. On or about Valentine's Day 2017, Lawyer A emailed the controller of the Trump Organization the first monthly invoice, which stated, pursuant to the retainer agreement, kindly remit payment for services rendered for the months of January and February 2017. The invoice requested payment to the amount of $35,000 for each of those 2 months. The Trump Organization CFO approved the payment, and in turn, TO controller sent the invoice to the Trump Organization accounts payable supervisor. So this person may be a witness, but may not have known what was going on there. With the following instructions: post to legal expenses, put retainer for the months of January and February 2017 in the description. Lawyer A submitted 10 similar monthly invoices by email to the Trump Organization for the remaining months in 2017. Each invoice falsely stated that it was being submitted pursuant to the retainer agreement, which, again, did not exist. If Trump says it does exist, he should be able to produce it. Show that to the court. It ain't there. In fact, there was no such retainer agreement, and Lawyer A was not being paid for the services rendered in any month of 2017. That was fraud. The TO controller forwarded each invoice to the TO accounts payable supervisor. These are the people that are going to be asked to confirm that they did that, so that Bragg can prove that this was a fraudulent business activity. Consistent with the TO controller's initial instructions, the TO accounts payable supervisor printed out each invoice and marked it with an accounts payable stamp and the General Ledger Code 51505 for legal expenses. Wasn't that? The Trump Organization maintained the invoices as records of expenses paid as instructed. Trump Organization accounts payable supervisor recorded each payment in the Trump Organization's electronic accounting system, falsely describing it as a legal expense pursuant to a retainer agreement for the month of 2017. For a month of 2017, the Trump Organization maintained a digital entry for each. Oh hell yes! For each expense called a voucher. And these vouchers, like vouchers for other expenses, became part of the Trump Organization's general ledgers. There is a trail. Remember all those times people were saying, Michael Cohen he's known liar, Michael Cohen. Folks, what Bragg is spelling out here, there is a trail pointing to each step of this. Every one of these things he's mentioning the related footprints of it. The Trump Organization, and the guy's name is on the company. All right. The Trump Organization's account payable supervisor then prepared checks with attached check stubs for approval and signature. Oh boy. The first check was paid from the defendant's trust and signed by the Trump Organization CFO and the defendant's son as trustees. There it is. Wild to me that Eric isn't named. The check stub falsely recorded the payment as retainer for blah, 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 blah. All right, presumably I just now realized. No. I have no idea. The second check for March 2017 was also paid from the trust and signed by two trustees. The check stub falsely recorded payments as yada, yada, yada. Retainer for whenever. The remaining checks corresponding to the months of April through December 2017 were paid by the defendant personally. Whoa. So he's got his business wrapped up in this. And then he also has his own personal bank account wrapped up in this. Each of these checks was cut from the defendant's bank account and sent, along with the corresponding invoices from Lawyer A, from the Trump Organization in New York to the defendant in Washington, D.C. The checks and stubs bearing the false statements were stapled to the invoices also bearing false statements. The defendant signed each of these checks personally and then had them sent back to the Trump Organization in New York County. All right, real quick. Imagine that Donald Trump says, I don't know. Hey, Michael Cohen was off doing yada, yada. I don't know what he was up to. It wasn't me doing all this money laundering. Okay. Here's a check, Donald Trump, that you signed. You signed this, you famously stingy man. You signed this check and gave it to Michael Cohen. The question Alvin Bragg will be asking is, what did you think you were paying him for? What services did you think he was providing for you? What was he doing for you during that time? The lack of answer is going to be phenomenally interesting. There, the checks, the stubs, and the invoices were scanned and maintained in the Trump Organization's data systems before the checks themselves were detached and mailed to Lawyer A for payment. The $35,000 payment stopped after the December 2017 payment. Part 3, the investigation into Lawyer A and the defendant's pressure campaign. So we've had the majority of the crime presented. Now we're getting into the kind of stuff where after this evidence gets aired out in court, I am positive other prosecutors will have things to say. Because this is mob shit. And remember, we read Elie Mosell's book together. What does the mob do? The mob provides its henchmen with lawyers to keep the henchmen in line when they get in trouble. That is how the mob stops people from flipping on them to get out of jail time. They provide the lawyer for their henchmen. You better believe that happens here. Just like it did with poor Cassidy Hutchinson at first in the January 6th committee. On or about April 9, 2018, the FBI executed a search warrant on Cohen's residences and offices. Jake Tregellis in Michigan was doing shots in celebration. And in the month that followed, the defendant and others, it's weird that he mentioned me personally, others engaged in a public and private pressure campaign to ensure that Lawyer A did not cooperate with law enforcement and other federal investigation. In the months that followed, the defendant and others engaged in a public and private pressure campaign to ensure that Lawyer A did not cooperate with law enforcement in the investigation. In other words, and this is what I had thought I had seen yesterday, but inexplicably, it's not a charge. Not inexplicably, I just realized that's the FBI's job. Not a lawyer, so I fortunately don't have to know this. But that's obstruction of justice. That is obstruction of justice. And Alvin Bragg is saying, as part of his financial crime thing here, let me explain to you how this obstruction of justice worked. On the day of the FBI searches, Lawyer A called to speak with the defendant to let him know what had occurred. In a return call, the defendant told Lawyer A to stay strong. So in other words, he tells him, don't talk. On or about April 21, 2018, the defendant publicly commented on, Trump publicly commented on Twitter encouraging Cohen not to flip, stating, "Most people will flip if the government lets them out of trouble, even if it means lying or making up stories, Michael. Sorry, I don't see Cohen doing that." In mid-April 2018, Lawyer A was also approached by an attorney, call him Lawyer C, who I bet we're going to hear from in court, who offered to represent him in the interest of maintaining a back channel of communication to the defendant. In other words, these two aren't supposed to be talking, but hey, we can do a secret back channel. On or about April 21, 2018, Lawyer C emailed Cohen, highlighting that he had a close relationship with Trump's personal attorney, Lawyer D, and stating, "This could not be a better let's do a proper mob voice. This could not be a better situation for the president or you." Later that day, Lawyer C emailed Lawyer A, again writing, "I spoke with Lawyer D. Very, very positive. You are loved." Lawyer D said his communication channel must be maintained. "Sleep well tonight. You have friends in high places." Oy, Kavolishmir. On or about June 14, 2018, Lawyer C emailed Cohen a news clip discussing the possibility of Cohen cooperating and continued to urge him not to cooperate with law enforcement, writing, "The whole objective of this exercise by the federal prosecutors is to drain you emotionally and financially until you reach a point that you see them as your only means to salvation." In the email, Lawyer C wrote, "You are making a very big mistake if you believe the stories these journalists are writing about you. They want you to cave. They want you to fail. They do not want you to persevere and succeed." This dude's communicating for Trump. On August 21, 2018, Cohen pleaded guilty in the federal investigation. The next day, on or about August 22, 2018, Trump commented on Twitter, "If anyone is looking for a good lawyer, I would strongly suggest that you don't retain the services of Michael Cohen." Later that day, the defendant posted to Twitter again, stating, "I feel very badly for one of his former campaign managers who had been criminally charged," saying, "Unlike Cohen, he refused to break, make up stories, or get a deal." This guy literally wrote The Art of the Deal. Just thought I'd toss in that piece of irony. Supposedly very pro getting a deal. This section is called "Cohen and AMI Admit Guilt in Connection with the Payoffs of Woman 1 and Woman 2. Ultimately, other participants in the scheme admitted that the payoffs were unlawful. In or about September 2018, September 2018, AMI entered into a non-prosecution agreement. Well, there's that question earlier answered. They've already, this was known. They already are in an agreement, so never mind. But Pecker is, he's got to testify. All right, with the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, in connection with AMI's payoff of Woman 1, admitting that at no time during the negotiation or acquisition of Woman 1's story did AMI intend to publish a story or disseminate information about it publicly. Rather, AMI admitted that it made the payment to ensure Woman 1 did not publicize damaging allegations and the defendant about Trump before the 2016 presidential election and thereby influence that election. It's already been admitted in court. God damn. Because this was part of Cohen's whole deal that got him put in the clink. In August 21, 2018, lawyer A. Cohen pleaded guilty to a felony in connection with his role in AMI's payoff of Woman 1, admitting in his guilty plea that he had done so at the defendant's direction. Listen to this. On or about the summer of 2016, in coordination with and at the direction of a candidate for federal office, Trump, I and the CEO of a media company, Picard, at the request of the candidate, worked together to keep an individual with information that would be harmful to the candidate and to the campaign from publicly disclosing this information. After a number of discussions, we eventually accomplished this goal by the media company entering into a contract with the individual under which she received a compensation of $150,000. I participated in this conduct, which on my part took place in Manhattan for the principal purpose of influencing the election. God damn. That ain't good. Cohen also pleaded guilty to a felony in connection with his payoff of Woman 2 to secure her silence again at the defendant's, Trump's, direction. Lawyer A admitted this as part of his guilty plea. And I'm just going to read the first sentence, which says, date in coordination with and at the direction of the same candidate, and then a confession. The payoffs. I mean, Christ. Oh, we were so close. 1 second. Let me get this out of you. All right, all of that. I was going to read the counts too, but they say the same thing. We just need one of those many, many highly documented crimes which other people have been charged for. We just need one of them to be found guilty in order for this guy to get the punishment he was going to get regardless. Beyond that, the airing of all of that dirty laundry is going to be gross but helpful for America. It's a wild one, folks. Wicked Foxy Dragon says, we don't know if Eric testified yet. Yeah, I really don't. I don't know what's up with that. Trump doesn't seem to hate him, and Trump's not very good at hiding his feelings, so I don't know. Like I said earlier, they want Trump to keep talking. I think you're right. I think you're certainly right there. Wicked Foxy Dragon says 2 charges makes it a felony. Yes, but my concern is not that he even do time, because I think what we're talking about is such a piddly little thing. It's just to prove that he was lying to people officially in a court, gavelled down. You GD lied. That's what I want out of this. The serious stuff, the spend the rest of your life in prison stuff, that's January 6th. That's the obstruction, various obstruction cases. That's the documents stuff. LOL, I had a stuttering problem in the last comment. Fair enough. Mars Falcon, it's disturbing that their defenses on the right are never about whether the crime occurred, but whether it is a crime. And look at that guy, he did it too. Tens of millions of people believe them. Yeah, when you have Trumpers in your life, say that stuff. Keep redirecting it towards those core principles. Number one, did he do the thing? Number two, is the thing illegal? Number three, should somebody be immune then because of a job they've had? In other words, what job makes you royalty in America? Mars Falcon, every time some hack fraud claims that the indictments or investigations are political, point out that the only reason he hasn't been arrested before the blatant crime is because of politics and money. Very good point. Yes. Extraordinarily good point. They're right, Trumpers, when they say that he's being treated differently because he was a politician. Yes, he was treated much easier because he was a politician. Mark L. Madison, no, but they need the felony to disqualify him from running again, right? I suppose so. But I'm not concerned that this guy is going to wind up with a felony conviction. Put simply, we were all present for January 6th. And the phone call with Brad Raffensperger is recorded. My only concern is that somehow that won't go to trial before 2024. But now that he is starting with court cases and they're like somebody finally had the guts to say, no, the law is the law, we're charging this guy. Now I'm not concerned, because Merrick Garland is the kind of guy who would have been hesitant to file any charges at all just because Trump used to be the president. This is me personally speculating, but that's fine. As long as I'm clear here that it is speculation. But Merrick Garland would have been a lot more hesitant, in my opinion, without somebody else being brave first. And even though it's this hush money payments to a porn star thing, what I'm most concerned about is that we demonstrate that Trump is no different than anybody else. So I do think they're going to get him on most, if not all, of these. But as long as the thing is in court, I'm happy. Foxy Dragon said, I just read that being a felon does not disqualify anyone from holding office. Fair. Yeah, it doesn't. I think, what did Glenn Kirshner say? You can be in prison, theoretically, and be president. There is... I'll come back to that regarding the felony and presidency. Dustin Buck, good to see you, even if you don't like me so much. I'll tell you what, man, I really do hope you come by on Friday at 9 p.m. I want to see the media you're looking at. And if you feel that I'm so wrong, I want to see what you're seeing that convinces you of the other side of this thing. Because if I am wrong, I want to be right. So show me. We'll be we're pretty friendly now, but we'll be a lot friendlier on Friday at 9 p.m. because that is Peace Talks, where we're very zen. Yeah, I am mostly thrilled with this, and it's not. It would, in my opinion, it would have been the best case scenario if somewhere in there we would have read in an email that Donald Trump wrote, or a letter by Donald Trump, or this or that. But we do have a recording on the phone of the guy talking about concealing these payments. And theoretically, hopefully, God, I hope, there is some other documentation of him saying, after the election's done, let's just not pay her. Like written, Trump composed the documentation, or Trump was secretly recorded, or whatever. Because if that's done, then that's it. That's the whole game. It's over. But regardless, even without that, this is pretty close to a slam dunk. I mean, it looks like the guy did this thing. But we'll see. We'll see. It's going to go to court. I know I said we would do the Max Frost thing. Tell you what, let me have a look at. Ooh, son of a gun! I made a lot of promises, didn't I? We're at 16 likes, so now I'm obligated to make good on the other thing, which is the breaking news from the Midas Touch. Tell you what, let me start by grabbing that Max Frost. The long stream, folks, enjoy. Gonna be a lot of clipping. Patrick Kibido says, "Are you going to allow user content again on Friday? Dustin can come prepared." Yes, Dustin. Save a link, like a URL, to any media you think we should watch to get educated. On Friday, we've got a system we use to share those links. I'll look at it. I will certainly look at it. We'll talk about it live. Educate us. You have an opportunity here to convert a bunch of lefties to the truth. So let's. I'm gonna have a gander. I'm going to look very quickly for that Maxwell Frost speech. But first, I'm gonna play, while I'm looking for that, this announcement, because we're still dealing with Trump stuff. This announcement that Midas Touch just did regarding Jack Smith's investigation into Trump's, stolen documents case. And Dustin, while you're here, for the record, I also think it is embarrassing and terrible that Biden had documents. I think the way they handled it after they both discovered that they had documents, we'll find out if they intentionally took them, although it sounds like Trump said he did intentionally take them. But regardless, I think Biden's handling of the post-discovery was legal and Trump's was not. But for the record, I also think it was shameful that Biden, good Christ, had a bunch of classified documents next to his GD car in his garage. We got to fix that. Like, even if you always hate my guys and I always hate your guys, we can agree that neither of these clowns should have classified flippin' documents just hanging out in their house. That can't be. We need a better system for that. And let's work together to make that the case. Good God. All right, I'm loading up Midas Touch. I want to see this very badly. I only saw a teeny tiny snippet because it only became apparent that this had happened like minutes before the show started. So we're going to be learning about this in large part together. It does appear, though, that the broad stroke is, and I'll do a little intro right here, that Mike Pence is going to be testifying against Trump, which is just, that's a big one, folks. Oof. I really have pooched this setup something fierce. We got Trump's arraignment picture, though. All right, let's see if this works.
I'm Ben Meiselas from the Midas Touch Network, and this is a breaking news alert. Another big win for special counsel Jack Smith in his criminal investigations of Donald Trump. We are now learning that former Vice President Mike Pence will not be filing an appeal to the district court order which compelled him to testify before the criminal grand jury in Washington, D.C. Folks, what this means is that in very short order, former Vice President Mike Pence will be providing under oath testimony, which he was previously trying to avoid before a criminal grand jury in Washington, D.C., about mostly all of the information he was privy to about Donald Trump's conduct leading up to the January 6th insurrection. You will recall from our previous reporting that former Vice President Mike Pence had tried to object to the subpoena that he was issued by special counsel Jack Smith, asserting what's called the speech and debate privilege. Essentially, what former Vice President Mike Pence was arguing is that because as a vice president, he had a dual role and also was the president of the Senate, he argued that for all of his legitimate legislative conduct that he engaged in as president of the Senate, he should be shielded from having to give testimony under Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution, which is called the Speech and Debate Clause, which protects lawmakers in the House of Representatives and the Senate from having to testify on issues that involve legitimate legislative activity. Judge James Boasberg, who is the new presiding judge, the new chief judge of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., almost in all regards overruled former Vice President Mike Pence's objections. And Judge Boasberg essentially said, look, for a limited period of time where you had this ceremonial role on January 6th as president of the Senate, you could assert the speech and debate privilege for that short period of time. However, with all of the other communications you've had with Donald Trump, with all of your other observations, with everything else that took place leading up to the January 6th insurrection, when you were not in that ceremonial role, and also after the January 6th insurrection, where you didn't have that ceremonial role where you were counting the electoral votes, you have to testify before the grand jury in Washington, D.C. This is something that former Vice President Pence tried to avoid. But now, after losing in the district court where James Boasberg had ruled those objections that you're making on speech and debate privilege are incorrect, Pence is saying, I am not going to even appeal this to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. I understand that I lost. I am going to go and testify now before the grand jury. Look,
Hey, quick question. That Max Frost speech you were talking about, was that a response to Lauren Boebert? Just trying to download the right clip. I got comments galore to come on Midas Touch here, but I just want him to say his piece. But while he's talking, was that in response to Lauren Boebert? Because I cannot wait if that is the case.
I think one of the reasons that Pence even asserted what I've always called a very frivolous objection under the speech and debate privilege of the United States Constitution was because Pence is a coward and Pence wanted cover. Pence wants to say, look, I tried to object. Look, all the MAGA people. I tried to object. I put up the speech and debate privilege, but a judge ordered me, and so I am just following what the judge is requiring me to do. I am not going to appeal this anymore. What Pence has not learned the lesson, as most of these MAGA Republicans have not, him doing that doesn't matter. I'm sure Donald Trump is going to start attacking him again very, very soon, the same way Donald Trump attacks Bill Barr and any MAGA Republican who doesn't pledge full obedience to the MAGA Republican cult. And what you'll recall, though, it wasn't just Pence who lodged these objections to his testimony before the federal criminal grand jury that special counsel Jack Smith is submitting evidence to. Donald Trump's lawyers, on behalf of Trump, they asserted executive privilege, a different privilege assertion than Pence. So Pence asserted speech and debate privilege. Donald Trump's lawyers asserted executive privilege. And although not specifically related to former Vice President Pence, You will recall from some of our other reporting here on the Midas Touch Network that the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals had overruled Donald Trump's objections and affirmed the lower federal court's ruling that executive privilege didn't apply to people like former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and the former National Security Advisor and former social media director Dan Scavino and all of Donald Trump's former top aides. So
that was always just a wild claim, and I'm annoyed at how much it has held up. It shouldn't. He ain't the executive. I understand that after you leave office, there are some privileges that remain, but it's not meant to be used like this, not to this extent. And secrets are bad in government. When you talk about it in broad strokes, we don't want to encourage this stuff. And I really wish Joe Biden would just come out all the time and be like, just so you know, any executive privilege claims don't exist as far as I'm concerned, given that I'm the executive and I say this stuff ought to be looked at. So no, he does not have executive privilege. I realize that Biden has said that before, but he should make it clear. He should repeat it constantly. He's not going to. That's not his style. He's not trying to just please your old pal Jake. I get it. But that's my on my wish list. Believe it or not, I'm fine with Pence asserting those privileges as technically a member of the Senate. Legally, I should say. I don't think it's a bad call, or it was even necessarily a bad call. I just think number one, no member of the Senate has that in regards to January 6th. They are witnesses to a crime. But number two, he shouldn't be resisting. He should have the courage, and not forget courage. He should have the desire to present the truth. He's not, just like we talked earlier with how people aren't really saying Trump is innocent. They're just looking for other reasons why other people are bad, or why Trump is being picked on for breaking this rule. Not that he didn't break the rule. Similarly, Mike Pence, he should want to get the truth to the American people. He should be volunteering. Everybody, if they were honest actors, they're not. But if they were, but they are pretending to be, they should be volunteering as much information as they possibly can. Mike Pence will never, ever, ever, ever be president. Nobody likes him. Nobody respects him. Nobody should like or respect him. And the last person to realize that he will never be president will be Mike Pence.
Precedent that is created in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals means that Donald Trump will absolutely not be able to successfully appeal the executive privilege claim trying to block Pence. So what this means in total is that Pence will be testifying before the criminal grand jury in Washington, D.C. Just so you understand how frivolous former Vice President Pence's speech and debate privilege claim was, let me break it down for you right now.
And now let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner. Fast-growing.
Oh, Jordy, well done. I want him to break that down because I don't think it was. My initial impression was that it was not quite so frivolous. I mean, all right, I take this back. Where I think the weakness is the fact that they're not asking him about his official, like, what he did when things were going normal, when he was fulfilling his job. They're asking him about, hey, you remember how you got chased through the Capitol and had to hide? That's what they're asking him about. So I think I agree with all parties here, except that I believe that Mike Pence was just being despicable in trying to expand those protections. But I do think he had the protections. Let's see how wrong I am. I promise you, we'll knock him out Pete up there. He's probably got it better than me, but we'll see. My job's organizing. His job's reporting. Or commenting. Whatever. Here we go.
Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution states the following. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall in all cases, except treason, felony, and the breach of peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses and in going to and returning from the same. And for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. So that's the clause that former Vice President Mike Pence relies on. And there's a whole body of case law surrounding that clause. And one of the definitive cases is a 1972 United States Supreme Court case called Gravel versus the United States. It extends the doctrine of what constitutes legitimate legislative activity, not just to the lawmakers themselves, but also to their staffs. But it defines the contours of what is legitimate legislative activity. And if the conduct is legitimate legislative activity by members of the House of Representatives and senators, even if it's technically outside of the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate, they can shield their testimony under speech and debate clause. However, legitimate legislative activity does not include crimes. It does not include exhortations, extorting, aiding and abetting criminal conduct. And it also does not include press statements and statements made to the press.
And it doesn't include being the victim of a crime or a witness to, yada, yada, yada.
The court said these categories fall outside of what would otherwise be legitimate legislative conduct. And you may recall, because we did a report on it, Lindsey Graham, an actual senator from South Carolina, he tried to assert speech and debate clause immunity so as to not testify before the Fulton County District Attorney.
Dustin, if you've had the guts to stick with us, again, by the way, I congratulate you on the chutzpah. And two, how do you feel about that? The fact that Lindsey Graham didn't want to participate. Forget whether or not he can be made to participate. How do you feel about the fact that he didn't want to participate? If you believe that Donald Trump did nothing wrong, what beef do you have with saying so in an official capacity? I realize it sounds like I'm accusing. I'm not accusing. I'm truly curious. Let me put it like this. If I'm going to get rid of that box. If Joe Biden, I don't like Joe Biden. Let's take somebody I do like. If Bernie Sanders was accused of a crime, and who's someone who's kind of in his crew loosely, and Ilhan Omar was asked to come into court and be a witness. And Ilhan Omar refused. Not only would I write her and tell her, what are you doing? Get up there and defend Bernie. Tell the truth. Not only would I write her and say that, it would make me doubt why I ever supported her in the first place. It would make me go back and look at everything I ever heard her say and question it. It would do the same for Bernie Sanders, for that matter. If they were resisting the courts, if they were trying to make it harder for the courts to get to the truth, it would tell me that the truth for them is dangerous. And then I would wonder, why is that? That's what it would do for me. So here we have Trump and Lindsey Graham and just everybody on the Republican ticket doing everything they can to keep the court from learning what happened. Even if you think these are the people who are correct and these people didn't break the law, why are they afraid to tell their story in court where it is illegal to lie? Why is that? I don't expect you to have the answer, but why do you think it is? Have you not considered that? If you have considered it, what makes you still support them? What makes you at least not admit that that's effed up? And if you don't think there's anything wrong with that, my question to you would be, how can we find out what is true? Are we supposed... Right now, you think my guys do nothing but lie. And I think your guys do nothing but lie. And to me, kind of seems like whichever one of us is correct, we should find out. And if you don't think the court is a place to find out who is correct, my question would be, where then? Even if, like with the earlier story, with the 45's first 34. As I said, even if there is no conviction, even if there's a technicality this guy gets off on, what excites me most about this is the truth coming out in court. That's what I care about. Yes, I do think this dude needs to be convicted. Yeah, I think he needs to be in prison. Yeah, I hope it makes his 2024 campaign impossible, not because there's a statute in the law, but because he can't go out holding rallies. He's too busy being cuffed and behind bars. That's what I want in my soul of souls. But the most important thing to me is that you find out you've been lied to, sir. Because I think you've been lied to, and I think we're going to find that out in court. Give me your thoughts. Let's let Knock 'em Out Pete keep going.
Attorney's special grand jury that was taking evidence about Donald Trump's election interference there, and ultimately what the federal court all the way up to the United States Supreme.
Mark L. Madison says, as a Minnesotan, I'd support her talking about Ilhan Omar, but I'd say something pretty terse under my breath. Yeah, fair enough.
Court said is based on the precedent of Gravel versus the United States. You know, any activity that was like in furtherance of the Trump campaign activities and any activity by Lindsey Graham that was exhorting or extorting or threatening local lawmakers in Georgia, that's not subject to legitimate legislative activity protection. So what the argument by special counsel Jack Smith was with respect to former Vice President Mike Pence was the first argument is that he's not entitled to this protection at all. Pence is not a senator. Pence is not a member of Congress, not a member of the House of Representatives. And to the extent he has this ceremonial role, it's for that short period of time. I think special counsel Jack Smith wins on that alone. And then separately, Pence being used by Donald Trump to commit crimes, Pence being the recipient of death threats by Donald Trump, Pence being in the room where Donald Trump conspired to overthrow our democracy. Even if you had a member of the House of Representatives or a senator involved in that, that is not legitimate legislative activity regardless. And so the new chief judge, Judge James Boasberg, also known, goes by the name Jeb Boasberg, looked at these facts, and ultimately Chief Judge Boasberg said, look, for purposes of speech and debate immunity, there's a short period of time. You had the ceremonial role on January 6th. You count the electoral votes, sure. For that period of time, you will get the immunity. And by the way, that makes no difference because the key thing here is that Pence observed all of these other acts by Donald Trump, both before and after January 6th, which he's now going to have to testify to the grand jury under oath about. So that's really big. And the Judge Boasberg said that period of time, you don't have to testify. Everything else, testify. And then Pence had the ability to appeal this all the way up to the Supreme Court. He didn't even file file an appeal to the D.C. Circuit. And he goes, all right, my hands are tied. I'm testifying before the criminal grand jury now. And so that will take place in short order. So very big news. You're going to have the former vice president of the United States now providing testimony that will be very harmful to the former president, Donald Trump, but will be very helpful for the truth, very helpful for democracy. Oh, and one other point I wanted to make about the arguments that special counsel Jack Smith likely made to the judge as well. Because Pence wrote books about it and has given press tours about it, one way to completely get around the speech and debate clause immunity here, as you now know, is statements to the press are not legitimate legislative activity. So Jack Smith can just basically say, hey, we're just going to ask him questions about what he said to the press. We want that to be under oath. So Pence is saying, I'm not putting up any more fights with Jack Smith. This was important that Jack Smith was not kind of psyched out by Pence and Pence's lawyers, because that's what they tried to do. They tried to basically scare away Jack Smith's team into believing this was going to be a long, bloody legal battle. And Jack Smith was like, bring it on. I don't care. We'll take this all the way to the Supreme Court. You're going to lose based on the case law regardless. You're going to keep on losing and further disgrace yourself, or you're going to testify. And Pence tapped out and was like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to testify before the grand jury. And there's a statement from Pence's spokesperson just confirming this.
Oh, hell yes.
It's David O'Malley who says, quote, Vice President Pence will not appeal the judge's ruling and will comply with the subpoena as required by law. Big news, folks, to report. Hit subscribe. We are on our way to 1.5 million subscribers here on the...
I mean, I wouldn't say we're well on our way to 1.5 million subscribers, but we're trying. We're getting there. Speaking of, I would love, and it's some balls saying this, I would love in this 30-day span to increase the subscriber count of this channel by five times. I want to get to 10,000. It's doable. I am going to bust my hump to make that happen. Because obviously I have the majority interest in that. But I hope if you're a fan of the channel, you want to keep seeing it, you want it to prosper, and you want it to get better. You want to get more powerful because there's more people working with us to get stuff done. Help me out. Share this thing. You guys are the best. You've all liked this stream so far. Thank you. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. Share it. Share this on social media. Share it with your friends and family. Invite people in. Have people stop by the stream. We are going for 10,000 subscribers. Christ Jesus. Going to have to do better than that if we want it. We're going for 10,000 subscribers by the end of April. Oh, yeah. Ballsy but doable. Nothing that we have to do on that last one. It's just an interesting, good development. Good news is as important as the other stuff. The takeaways from today, by the way, I'm sorry, I could not find the Maxwell Frost speech from today. I will look at it when I'm not also dealing with the running of the stream. But we will do that. That'll be in the nearest possible stream. A couple of housekeeping things you guys might want to hear about. Hell, this is going to be its own clippable segment right here. A men's rights activist recently changed my mind on something. Yeah. Just because we normally disagree with someone, and hey, Dustin, if you're still here, I want you to look at this as an example of how the opposition to your beliefs can indeed be swayed, because your old pal Jake was. Just because we normally disagree with somebody does not mean that everything they say is inherently wrong, and comments are not just for the algorithm. Yes, they are very much for the algorithm. Please, just go leave random comments in my videos. Just talk about anything. Just write paint can, paint can, paint can. Boost that algorithm. But also, crazy enough, people read them. And I read a comment by a men's rights activist, which will affect the course of this channel. Don't worry. It's not so bad as all that. But here's what the fella said. Making jokes about people's genitals is not cool. Just not cool. This is unfortunate for me because I believe he is correct. What the guy said essentially amounts to, it's no different than making fun of somebody's skin color or their beak or anything else. It's something they're born with and they can't help. So it's not okay to make fun of somebody for that. Here's what bums me out. We're entering into a case. I've been so mature about this too. I didn't talk about it but one time in the whole of that charging document. But Stormy Daniels has mentioned that the person that she slept with has a uniquely scaled set of genitals, and that may come up in court. And the fact that this is maybe the one president in the history of the country who has outwardly expressed how much he cares about what other people think about the size of his whatever, makes it hilarious that he may also be the first and probably only president ever to have the size of his genitals discussed in a court of law. And there's something even funnier about that, which I will not be able, ethically, now that this son of a gun who left the comment and had the audacity to be right, in my opinion, has done this. What's uniquely funny is that there may have to be an expert on genitals brought in to say whether or not what she is saying is accurate. After all, how do you define size? You might say that she herself is an expert, but then the defense would argue that she's biased, etc., etc. Anyway, what all this is to say is that I've got a backlog of jokes that are no longer morally okay for me to say. I mean, literal notebooks full of jokes. So what I have done, rather than try to live like a saint, I'm going to live like a repentant sinner. Which is to say, this Salty Saturday, for the last time, hopefully ever, I'm going to be just doing all kinds of genitals-based jokes. I say this as a warning to you because you are adults and you may be too mature for this type of humor. Or you may agree, as I do, with this activist and simply not want to hear it. Fair enough. But every joke I have regarding size, shape, whatever, I'm going to do as a streaming special this Salty Saturday. And I will be salty about the fact that I will never again get to do this. And as punishment, I will not monetize the stream. There you go. Comments matter. Mars Falcon says, I saw this plot line in a Porky's movie as a kid. Hilarious. Everything about this is indeed hilarious. Mark L. Madison said, did this come out of a DeSantis Tiny D thing? I don't remember the video I was watching. I think it was a video about men's right activists in general. But one guy who was a self-confessed, confessed is probably a bad word, but a guy that said he was a men's right activist stood up for that point, and he had a good point. He had a good point. Imagine how much it sucks, genuinely, to have a physical trait of yours, doesn't matter what it is, constantly be the butt of jokes. It's even why I don't like using that term Karen to make fun of people. There's people actually named Karen, and your parents called you that. Good-natured genital jokes gestate congeniality among jovial gentlemen. Fair enough. And I'm certain, don't get me wrong, I'm going to make plenty of jokes about genitals. Simply, I'm going to avoid specifically jokes about size and what have you. But that said, look for the Moyle saying, "Morty, get the hedge clippers," because I'm going to be making every joke I have about genital size this Saturday. All right, y'all, this has been an XL WYCD stream. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, we are going to look at that Max Frost clip, but it's going to be when I have time to sort through things. That, of course, stands for what you can do. And you've done really well. You should be proud. If you would be so kind, leave a like if you haven't, subscribe if you haven't, tell your friends, invite them by. We are live at 8 p.m. every single weekday, except for Friday where it's 9. I'm going to work on a better outro, and we're starting to do morning streams at 10 a.m. when I remember. I will see you on the next one. My name's Jake. God, I'm going to get like a cue card with a script or something. Good Lord.